I know is reputable, first off. And then from there, I'll go and I'll take a piece of provenance that they have.
And when you say provenance, you just mean paperwork tracing the object's ownership, where it came from, that sort of thing?
Correct.
It sounds to me that that's where the real jeopardy lies, because A, if the paperwork was not legitimate, or B, if there are gaps in it, that's where someone like the ATU can step in.
I don't go by pan-signed documents unless they're like legitimate notarized old paperwork or correspondences. I go by old publications, like the old auction catalogs.
How much of your job is spent doing provenance research?
90%. 90%.
What's the other 10%?
Crying.
Why?
Just try to make sales, send emails, produce catalogs, do write-ups, inventory pieces, get things conserved, get things framed, set up exhibitions. It's a lot.
So being an antiquities dealer requires a lot more than just buying and selling something.
Yeah, it does.
According to Matthew Bogdanos, the ATU has seized nearly $500 million of antiquities. They're appraised by experts. However, there's no standard formula to value objects with so much history and variation. But he'd argue they're priceless. So where do all these precious pieces of stolen history go while they're waiting to return home?
We have a secure storage facility. They are all treated with the respect they deserve. They're evidence, so they are cataloged, photographed, inventoried. We fill out chain of custody, and then they're there until we get a court order to return them to the country of origin.
I originally wanted to record our conversation in the ATU evidence locker, surrounded by the dozens of pieces that were being stored there. But that wasn't allowed. However, Matthew did give me a tour after our interview, on the condition that I didn't record anything or take any photos. There were shelves filled with pieces made of bronze and stone, and labeled by country: Myanmar, Turkey, Afghanistan, Greece, Thailand, Italy. The list goes on. In a separate part of the room, there were two huge mosaics, one from Syria and another from Lebanon, laid out on the concrete floor. For a brief moment, I could see and feel ancient culture and history. It felt like walking through time. I asked Matthew if, after a bad day, he slips down to the room just to be around these objects. And without missing a beat, he answered yes. And each object gets a special send-off before it leaves the evidence room for its journey home.
We have a wonderful ceremony. It's like a mini wedding celebration, and we have done more than 140 of those so far, and every single one of them is special.
So how do you curtail a crime which has been taking place for centuries?
How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Happy Thursday. It is August 20th. And let's say hello to the wonderful crew helping put together today's show. Jenica Sewell is our studio technician, and Sierra Sanders is our studio director. She'll also be keeping an eye on your commute. And Darren Morash is in and looking, making your YouTube look good as well. Well, right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at 15 at the Forks, heading for a high today of 23. We'll have more details on your forecast coming up. Right now, let's check in with Megan Ketchison, who's in with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a man who fled persecution in Somalia has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for human smuggling in Canada. 33-year-old Abdi Ali pleaded guilty to helping smuggle people into Canada. In 2 cases in the winter of 2024, Ali picked up foreign nationals who had crossed from the U.S. into Manitoba on foot amid harsh conditions. Once he has served his time, he could also face deportation. And Health Canada has cut down the number of serious incidents involving plasma donors from 27 to 9. It says it did the revisions after reviewing reports from clinics such as for-profit company Grifols this summer. We'll hear from a health policy expert who says that raises a lot of questions.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
That's Megan Kettison at your CBC News desk. Lots of interesting stories coming up on this edition of Information Radio. After 7 o'clock, you may have seen them up around town, billboards, asking questions about Jesus or pushing back on evolution. Our faith contributor has spoken to some of the people behind those billboards. So we're going to bring you that story. But coming up this next hour on Information Radio, scientists are testing mRNA vaccines to help fight cancer. So we're going to hear more about how promising that technology can be. And also, the Manitoba Underground Opera held their first performance of Le Vili, or The Fairies, last night. We're going to meet the executive director, who says opera must be experienced in person. We're also going to get an update on the latest on the trade deal between Canada and the U.S. That and much, much more coming up this next hour on Information Radio. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
When acclaimed playwright and theater director Giovanni C. went back to school a few years ago, he was told to direct something funny. He'll be here to talk about his modern retelling of the 18th century British comedy, The Way of the World, set this time in Singapore.
You can talk about it really headily, but I swear to God, it'll make you laugh.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Mike Wise. A Belgian court decides today if a Canadian woman accused of spying at NATO headquarters will stay behind bars. Claire Biwig-Zhang was interning at NATO's military base when Belgian police arrested her last month. And as Ethel Musa reports, she's now fighting for pre-trial release.
The risk that she would jump bail and abscond is making it rather unlikely.
Criminal law professor Frank Verbruggen in Belgium says Claire Biwig-Zhang will likely remain in custody. The 33-year-old intern at NATO's military headquarters was arrested by Belgian authorities last month after her home and workplace were searched. Zhang was subsequently charged with spying on behalf of a third country and being a member of a criminal organization. European media reports say NATO's internal security services were alerted after Zhang allegedly exhibited suspicious behavior, like entering areas and accessing files she was not authorized to do so. Verbruggen says investigators are now focused on building a case and bringing their findings to trial.
I don't know how far they're going to dig and how many people they're going to involve and what links to foreign instances there might be, like Canada. There might be cooperation with the Canadian authorities.
Media reports have suggested the suspected country Zhang was allegedly spying for is China. The Chinese embassy in Canada tells CBC it firmly opposes baseless smears and speculations. Meanwhile, a House of Commons committee has agreed to examine Canada's security screening processes in light of Zhang's arrest. Ethel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Ottawa and Washington are working to finalize a trade deal after Donald Trump paused plans to impose new 50% tariffs on nearly $30 billion in Canadian goods. Negotiators now have until tomorrow to solidify a deal. Although talks have been extended, the ongoing trade uncertainty is expected to loom large over Quebec's soon-to-be-called fall election. The CBC's Alexander Silberman explains.
And we already have too much uncertainty. This is not what Quebecers want. This is not what Quebecers are asking for.
Quebec Premier Christine Fréchette, leader of the Coalition Avenir Québec, reacting to a policy pivot by the separatist Parti Québécois. Leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon says a referendum is still coming if his party wins the fall election, but not until U.S. President Donald Trump leaves office. Quebecers deserve a calm climate for discussions about their future, he says. The policy shift comes as parties try to appeal to Quebec voters feeling economic anxiety. The last round of tariffs were a major blow to the province's economy, and the trade war is once again top of mind, just days away from the expected start of the fall election.
And we will stand up for their jobs, for the economy.
Christopher Skeet is Quebec's Minister of International Relations.
Unfortunately, the world is increasingly unstable, and we're going to have to get used to that.
Amid the instability, The Parti Québécois is leading in the polls, with the Liberals close behind, and the governing CAQ trailing in third. The Quebec election will be held no later than October 5th. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Montreal.
Overnight strikes on Kyiv have left at least 12 people dead. Firefighters rush to put out the flames in a residential building. It is one of several hit during Russian strikes. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure. Vitaly Klitschko is Kyiv's mayor.
More than 4,000 buildings in our hometown was destroyed. Tonight, in this minute, we can talk about 12 people, civilians. I'm talking just about civilians.
Officials say Russians used drones along with cruise and ballistic missiles during the attacks. More than 40 people were injured. Kyiv's mayor is joining the chorus of voices calling for more air defense help from Ukraine's allies.
We need ammunition, we need anti-missile systems, we need support from our partners because it's protection for our civilians, protection for it's life of our citizens, life of civilians people.
Vitaly Klitschko has called for Friday to be observed as a day of mourning. The founder of fallen Chinese real estate giant Evergrande has been sentenced to life in prison for widespread financial fraud. A court in southern China handed down the ruling today. It found the real estate titan guilty of inflating assets, concealing liabilities, and orchestrating extensive bribery. Companies linked to the developer were also fined more than $2 billion. Evergrande collapsed under hundreds of billions of dollars in debt, triggering a property crisis that continues to weigh on China's economy. Cocaine continues to be the most seized substance along the Canada-U.S. border in southwestern Ontario. That's according to the latest data from the Canadian Border Services Agency. As the CBC's Jason Vio reports, tens of millions of dollars worth of cocaine have already been seized at several of the province's border crossings.
A Canadian Border Patrol dog sniffs a car for drugs at Windsor's Ambassador Bridge, a routine job for Nova and part of a behind-the-scenes tour for CBC News.
The bulk of our business is the narcotics that are coming from the United States.
Justin Morgan is with the CBSA at the bridge. Recent data shows agents at the 7 U.S. border crossings into southwestern Ontario seized more than $82 million worth of cocaine during the first 6 months of 2026. That number on track to surpass records at the same border crossings.
They always try and come up with new and creative ways to get those items into the country or out of the country.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection is seeing a similar trend, saying most of the drugs seized in Detroit were heading to Canada. Public U.S. data also shows that cocaine was the most confiscated drug over the last 2 years at crossings in Michigan and Buffalo, New York.
When it comes to cocaine, there's a very stable source of the plant itself.
Benoit Gomis is a drug trade and organized crime researcher at the Munk School of Global Affairs in Toronto. He says cocaine is appealing to criminal networks because there's also a stable demand.
There's a very straightforward playbook that they're used to. It's an easy substance to smuggle in many ways. It's very small.
Now the Gordie Howe International Bridge is open between Windsor and Detroit. Officials say they're monitoring shifts in traffic patterns and seizure data as the crossing has more advanced tools to detect illegal drugs. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
More bats are testing positive for rabies in British Columbia, and it's causing a growing concern for people and pets who may have a close encounter with the winged mammals. As the CBC's Alana Kelly reports, one local vet says everyone needs to be aware of the deadly disease that bats can carry.
Jordy Schnarr is a veterinarian in Whistler. In just one day, she treated 6 pets for encounters with bats.
It's been an unusual year in bat activity.
This year, there's been a big uptick with more than 24 bat encounters.
Vastly different from, what's typically less than a handful.
And people are also having encounters.
Definitely a change from what would be considered normal here.
Schnarr has sent off 4 bats to be tested for rabies. 1 was positive, another one was negative, and 2 are still pending.
Rabies is something we take really seriously. It is fatal if left untreated.
Most of the incidents are not happening outside.
A lot of the interactions that are happening with bats are actually inside the home.
1 tested positive for rabies on Vancouver Island in July. The local health authority says finding a single positive case is not unusual. Paula Rodriguez de la Vega is BC's bat coordinator. and says people should never touch one.
You can only get rabies through direct contact. Less than 1% of bats can carry rabies.
There has been an increase in people seeing the animals.
We're actually associating that mostly with the wildfires, especially in the Okanagan. There's been the wildfires are displacing wildlife, including bats.
The BC Centre for Disease Control says rabies is rare in humans. Anyone who has come in contact with a bat should seek medical assistance. Alana Kelly, CBC News, Squamish, British Columbia.
And finally, Prince Harry and Meghan are moving back to the United Kingdom 6 years after stepping away from royal life. Their relationship with the royal family soured after they were publicly critical of the monarchy and the family itself. Reports suggest the couple will now settle in a private residence outside London starting in the fall. However, the pair will remain private citizens and will not resume official duties for the monarchy. The move follows a recent reunion with King Charles. The king is undergoing cancer treatment. Still, tensions reportedly remain high between Prince William and Harry faces massive legal bills from his UK media battles. That's one of our top stories on our website. You can read more at cbcnews.ca. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Mike Wise. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk. I'm sitting in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Good to be with you. Coming up this hour on the show, a personalized mRNA vaccine is showing promising results against melanoma. We're going to dig into what makes this approach different and what it could mean for cancer patients. That's coming up later this hour. Also, concessions and compromise. We're going to go over what we know about the proposed trade deal between Canada and the U.S. But up first here on Information Radio, Manitoba's Underground Opera. Its new show opened last night, and this year the company's theme is greed. The executive director says the new show, which is from the 1880s, is a good fit for modern times. We're going to hear why coming up first right here on Information Radio. 6:11 right now. Let's check in first with Megan Ketchison with a look at news headlines.
Well, good morning. The federal government has a plan to lower grocery prices, and it includes spending $1 billion on food infrastructure, including wholesale marketplaces known as food hubs and food terminals. Manitoba's only food hub likes the idea if there's demand, but questions if it will balance fair prices for local farmers while still lowering your bill at the checkout. And a man in Steinbach is hoping to fill a transportation gap in smaller cities in Manitoba. 3 years ago, Justice Oladele landed in Manitoba after a friend suggested he move to Steinbach. When he arrived, he was surprised to find how few transportation options there were. Instead of complaining about the problem, he decided to create a solution. We'll find out what coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
That's Megan Ketchison at your CBC News desk. Let's take a look at your forecast here in Winnipeg. Right now, we're sitting at 15. Today, it's going to be mainly cloudy, high of 23. And then looking ahead, overnight, dipping down to 11. Partly cloudy overnight. And tomorrow, high of 23 can expect with a chance of showers and thunderstorms. And very similar forecast right across southern Manitoba as well today, including Brandon, Steinbach, and then up north in Thompson right now, sitting at 10, heading for a high today of 22 with a 60% chance of showers or thunder showers this afternoon. Well, let's check in now with Sierra Sanders, who is in with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. Yes, just a traffic note to let folks know about on northbound Main Street. So all northbound lanes of Main Street between Broadway to St. Mary are closed for communications work until August 28th. But one northbound lane will remain open at all times for traffic flow. So this morning, the northbound median lane is currently open from Broadway to St. Mary's there from Main Street due to that construction zone there. So there is that one lane open, but you can probably expect some backups throughout the morning on that stretch of Main Street there. So far, that's the only thing I'm really keeping my eye on or letting folks know about. But if that changes throughout the show, I would love to hear from you no matter where you are, no matter how you're getting around. Give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
last night, the Manitoba Underground Opera held their first performance of Le Villi, or The Fairies. It's an Italian opera written by Giacomo Puccini in the 1880s. And it's being performed at the Roundhouse Auditorium in downtown Winnipeg. And more shows are happening tonight and Saturday night before a final matinee performance on Sunday. And Brendan McKean is the executive director of Manitoba Underground Opera. And he joins me now in studio to talk about what people can expect from the performance. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
I imagine you didn't get much sleep if you were up last night for the first show, and now you're here.
Sleep is for the weak. We're fine.
So how did the first performance go?
Incredible. Wonderful. It fulfilled everything I wanted to. It's just a ton of beautiful emotions on stage, and people got swept right up in it.
And so tell me just about the opera itself. What's the story of Le Villi?
Wonderful. So it's the typical thing. It's a little bit German folk fairy tale sort of thing. A man and woman in love, newly engaged, life is going to go great. He's got to go collect an inheritance. He doesn't make it back. He gets seduced, he loses all his money, and in the time, she passes away. So instead of it just being a sad ending, well, the fairies, the Villi, come to life, and they don't like men who've scorned women. So they make him dance until, no spoilers, but it does not work out.
That's you got me hooked. So in the advertising for the show, the Manitoba Underground Opera said Le Villi is rarely performed. Why?
Absolutely. It's his first work. It's his first thing. We're familiar with La Bohème. We're familiar with Madame Butterfly, done by Manitoba Opera, coming up. These are kind of his main staples from the mid to late point of his career. Villi was written when he was 24, which I did not write anything like that when I was 24. I'm incredibly jealous. But it's just not done because it's much shorter and it's much earlier on. So we wanted to give it a chance to shine too.
It's also described as a loud performance. So
boy.
Why? What does that mean?
So basically, the Roundhouse Auditorium is not incredibly big. It's just right for a very intimate performance, and the audience is seated completely around the singers. And these are professional opera singers, plus 12 people in a chorus, plus a string quartet. And when they're all going, it is just loud. And so you are not just immersed in the room by watching the action, the sound is everywhere.
And why did you choose this opera in particular for the summer?
I really was thinking about all the things going on in the world and inflation, and how sometimes inflation is sometimes just corporate greed. Of course, not across the board, but on occasion that's what we see. And so I was very influenced by what does greed do to us as a society. So our last show was in July. It was about sweatshops. And now this one is kind of more of a fairy tale version of another way of talking about how this man's greed to get his money meant he left his love behind, and things did not work out for him.
And so let's get deeper into that. Why you chose greed as a theme for the summer?
Yeah, I just see so much. Underground Opera, we pick our seasons. We're really socially conscious about what's going on. A lot of our performers are, fresh out of school, or like Gen Zs or millennials, and the world's a bit different than when it was, especially 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 really. And so we want to always do something that's current, that is impacting people, and you see it all over the place. Budgets are getting tighter. Money's a little harder on everyone. That dollar has to go a little further. And I said, that's what I want to explore through the operatic art form this year.
And how do you describe the opera to people who have never been or may have preconceived notions about what it is? Like you said, it's, a lot of things have changed in the past 20 years. I think opera has too.
Yeah, well, we've always done everything in kind of this very close range sort of thing. Like I tell people, I say, if you want to be in the front row, absolutely go for it. Please be aware they will sing about 2 feet away from you directly into your face. And so everything about it is just so close.
And is that
people.
Just the way that you guys do opera, or is that what opera has become?
That's our version of it. If you think about theater in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, every company does something different. And so our goal is, instead of being big and lavish and, $1 million sets, if you will, we want to go, let's look at human emotions. Let's put you so close you don't need glasses. You can see their eyebrows. You can see every little movement in their body, and you can go, yep, I don't speak Italian, but I know that she's mad at him. and I know that he is not having a good time. I get it. Body language is clear.
Right. And is that why you do that? Is for because, otherwise things can get lost in translation?
I just, when I go to, like, I lived in Chicago for a few years, and I found, the big Chicago Lyric Opera, like I think the third biggest company in North America. And the best time I ever had was when I got to get up into the fourth row. And I was like, oh, I'm into this. I can see their faces. I'm not just, sitting, in the balcony watching the general body shapes. It's like I can see it in their eyes, what they are feeling. And so that's the opera that I want to create.
And what made you fall in love with opera in the first place?
Oh my gosh, I made friends with singers back in university. I went to the University of Manitoba. I made friends with all the singers. I am not a singer. I'm the only one who does not sing, so I save you all from that. And I just love storytelling. And so I just, as a little 20-year-old guy, I just had so many feelings. And so opera has so many feelings. It just felt right.
And looking ahead, the rest of the season, what can people expect? What are the details on this show and other things you got coming up?
Yeah, on this show, Thursday or tonight, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. And then we also have our neighborhood opera tour, which is for children ages 6 to 11. That's performing around Winnipeg and almost all of Manitoba until September 19th.
All right. Well, Brendan, thanks for your time this morning and all the best with the show.
Thank you so much.
Brendan McKean is the executive director of Manitoba Underground Opera. Performances of Le Villi are happening at the Roundhouse Theatre in downtown Winnipeg tonight, as mentioned, and on Saturday and Sunday. And for more information about the show or to get tickets, you can go to manitobaundergroundopera.com.
My name is Kevin Mallon. We opened up an office and shop space and live and work in the West End every day. The best part about the West End is for sure the community. I get such a warm feeling driving down the streets with the trees hanging over the streets so nicely. There's kids everywhere. I help by shoveling my neighbor's walkway. They help by making delicious Indian food for me. It's a great community. Love living there.
People, places, and stories. CBC Radio One, 89.3 FM.
6:20 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One. And while there is relief, the U.S. is backing down from the punishing new tariffs. There's still a lot of anxiety about where Canada stands. So I'm talking about the Canada and U.S. trade deal. They're close to reaching a trade deal. Sources with knowledge of the negotiations have told CBC that existing tariffs on auto, steel, and aluminum are coming down, but not far enough for some. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney has asked the premiers to reverse their U.S. booze bans. And for more on what we know about the proposed deal, we're joined by Sarah Ritchie. She's a parliamentary reporter with the Canadian Press. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how close do you think we are to a new trade deal with the U.S. right now?
The indications that we got yesterday were all very positive. We saw Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc and the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer leave a meeting together in Washington, sort of all smiles, and they told reporters things were moving really well. We saw the U.S. president come out and talk to reporters a couple of hours later, and he said, "I have a deal with Canada. It's really good. It's going to be great for American farmers. It's going to be great for Americans." And then we saw Dominic LeBlanc fly home from Washington to Ottawa, and the diplomacy began here on the Canadian side. So he and Prime Minister Carney then met with the cabinet. They met with premiers. They met with the advisory committee. And I think this is where, we're very close to a deal. All signs are really positive at this point. But the caveat here, there are two of them. And I would say the biggest one is that we're dealing with Donald Trump. So, nothing is a deal until it's fully a deal. And the second one is that we don't really know just yet what's in this for sure. We know what's on the table at this point, but things are not finalized to a state where Trump and Carney are being asked to sign off on anything just yet. And I think that's a really important caveat because as of right now, what we have is the framework of an agreement that could be handed over to the leaders. But so far, they don't have anything on their desks. And so all is sort of, I think, subject to change at this point.
And one of the things we have heard that might be in this potential deal, sources tell CBC that the U.S. will drop sectoral tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel from 50% to 25%. How big of a deal is that?
I think if you're taking like a really, really broad view of this negotiation, considering that Canada went into these talks trying to get Donald Trump to back down on a threat to impose 50% tariffs on a whole bunch of new things, and came out of it, it seems, with an agreement on these sectoral tariffs that have been a problem for over a year. I think that can be seen as a win. But where it's going to be really challenging is that in those industries, in the steel and aluminum industry, in the auto industry, where the tariffs have been really damaging, it's going to be hard to sell this as a win with a tariff rate that high. When the tariffs initially came into place, so for steel and aluminum, for example, I can remember the first round of tariffs was 25%. Then there was another round of tariffs adding another 25%. There was obviously, concern and panic and frustration and anxiety in the industry and in families who work in those industries when the 50% tariffs came into effect. But there was the same sort of feeling when those initial 25% tariffs came into effect. And I'm not sure, is it better? Yes, of course it's better. But I'm not sure that 25% is something that those industries can really afford to absorb over the long run. And I think that's what's going to be a really challenging thing for Mark Carney and for his cabinet to sort of sell to those industries. Not only, this is sort of the best we could get. Maybe that's the way that they try to sell it. But then what are the things that the Canadian government can and will do to sort of prop up and support those industries going forward?
I know dairy was on a big sticking point on the table leading into these negotiations. Yesterday, Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc said he was, quote, confident Canada's supply management system will remain intact, but didn't provide details. What are you expecting there?
Yeah, I think that what we heard from LeBlanc was interesting. He said that Mark Carney had given him instructions that the supply management system stays intact kind of no matter what. And then we heard from the U.S. president in, a statement that I will note was kind of filled with statements that didn't make a whole lot of sense. But when he was talking to reporters later, he said, this is a great deal for American farmers. There are no longer any tariffs on anything going into Canada. So where this will land with supply management, it's a bit up in the air. We don't really have a clear picture of what this is going to look like. But one of the indications that we had earlier in the week is that potentially what Canada could concede on this file, not ripping up the supply management system, which would be a massive change and a very politically challenging thing for the government, but allowing a greater level of access to American producers and distributors, similar to what Canada has allowed in the free trade deal that we have with the European Union. And so this would put the U.S. on sort of even footing with the EU, as well as with a number of other countries where Canada has free trade deals. It's something that I think will still be, something that the dairy industry will have lots of thoughts about. But at the same time, if that is where things go, it's sort of a concession that allows the Americans to get a bit more access into the Canadian market while keeping the structure of supply management in place.
Let's talk about some other concessions Canada's making. Here's Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston.
The Prime Minister has asked us as premiers, as provinces, to return the U.S. alcohol to the shelves. It's been an irritant. It's been something that has kind of really bothered the United States for so many reasons.
So how much goodwill would getting it back on the shelves earn?
I think this has been a really significant bargaining chip for the Canadian side. We've heard a lot of frustration from Americans, from American lawmakers, right up to the Trump administration and to the president himself, saying that they really are frustrated and angry and upset with Canada for taking the American alcohol off of the shelves. I think it's a sign that was, an effective strategy from the Canadian side. But if this has been a good bargaining chip for Mark Carney in Washington, he's also got to do a very good amount of diplomacy back here in Canada, because there are a lot of premiers who have really been, I think, quite happy to keep American alcohol off of the shelves, and a number of them who've been bullish on the idea that unless they get what they sort of want out of this, I'm thinking about BC Premier David Eby saying we need significant shifts on softwood lumber tariffs for us to want to put American alcohol on the shelves. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has said similar things in the past about steel and aluminum and autos. And we didn't hear from those guys yesterday about this. So, Tim Houston's on board. Alberta and Saskatchewan are on board. Where do the rest of the premiers stand? This is going to be some delicate diplomacy for Mark Carney and Dominic LeBlanc over the next couple of days.
Yeah, we've been trying to understand what Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew has thinks about it coming out of that meeting, but we haven't got any clear response yet.
Right.
Finally here, what will you be watching for today as the story continues to unfold?
I think I'm going to be watching for more, sort of like you guys are, watching for more reaction from the premiers that we haven't heard from yet. So Wab Kinew is on my list. Doug Ford is on my list. There are a couple of others that David Eby put out a short statement but didn't say a whole lot. I think I'll be watching for that. And then the main thing I'm really waiting to see is what actually gets put down in writing in this deal. So, as I mentioned off the top, a lot of this is all speculative about what could be in the agreement. But things are not finalized, and we're going to have to wait to see what's on paper before we really can assess what the impact of this will be. It did sound from the president's perspective like he thought this was sort of a done deal, but things are not done until they're completely signed and finalized and put into law. And so I think that's what I'll be watching for over the next little bit. And then the reaction from industries that are affected, is going to be really important in terms of how Canadians are going to feel about this going forward.
Sarah, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sarah Ritchie is a parliamentary reporter with the Canadian Press. Still ahead on our business report, we're going to talk a little bit more about the U.S. as well, more about the trade deal, but also how the U.S. government just reached a record milestone for spending. We're going to hear how big the American national debt is right now and what that means for the country going forward. That and much, much more coming up this next half hour on Information Radio, coming up after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 6:30. Mostly cloudy and 16. We're looking at a mainly cloudy day and a high of 23. A man who fled persecution in Somalia has been sentenced to 4 years in prison of human smuggling in Canada. 33-year-old Abdi Ali pleaded guilty to helping smuggle people into Canada. He now lives in Winnipeg and has a family. In 2 cases in the winter of 2024, Ali picked up foreign nationals who crossed from the U.S. into Manitoba on foot amid harsh conditions. His lawyer said Ali committed the offenses in a desire to help people facing circumstances like he once did. The judge underscored the dangers of the activity and also suggested with a wife and children, Ali had every reason to never do it again. With time served, he has another 500 days behind bars, and he could also face deportation. Health Canada says there have been fewer serious adverse reactions among plasma donors than it originally reported. The federal agency says it cut down a list of 27 incidents to 9 after reviewing reports from clinics this summer. The reports date back to 2018. Health Canada says for-profit company Grifols flagged that many of its reports did not meet the regulatory criteria. Health policy expert Andrew Longhurst says revisions raise a lot of questions, and he argues that some would be answered if the system was more transparent.
If we had, for example, public reporting without revealing any personal information, this would add a level of transparency and build public trust.
Health Canada says it reevaluated all reports during the review. The revised list shows 6 events at clinics now owned by Grifols. The company says it continues to work with regulators. In national news, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc met with Cabinet and the country's premiers yesterday to brief them on the tentative trade deal with the U.S. While some of the details are still outstanding, initial reaction from some premiers is still positive. Tom Perry reports.
It was a good discussion. The Prime Minister and I had an opportunity to update our Cabinet colleagues.
Back in Ottawa after a marathon negotiating session in Washington, D.C., Dominic LeBlanc, Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, briefed Cabinet about a potential deal with the U.S. LeBlanc and Prime Minister Mark Carney later convened a meeting of provincial and territorial premiers.
The Prime Minister updated the premiers on where we were in terms of our discussions with the United States. We have more work to do.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston took part in the briefing and says he's encouraged.
I'm really optimistic about what I heard today. We heard some details, but obviously some are still being worked out.
Dominic LeBlanc says Canada's chief negotiator, Janice Charette, remains in Washington, working to iron out final details in the proposed deal. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
Manitoba's only food hub questions how the federal government will balance fair prices for local farmers while tempering food inflation. Food hubs and food terminals are wholesale marketplaces where independent grocers and restaurants can buy in bulk directly from farmers and producers. Ottawa wants to help build or expand 10 food hubs and 2 terminals across Canada. It's part of a national strategy to make food more affordable and produce more of it in the country. The idea is that grocers can bypass large retailers and have more options to pick from, potentially lowering prices that can then be passed on to consumers. Fireweed Food Co-op, based in Manitoba, is the only food hub here in this province. Katie Damon is the co-chair.
We are increasing the purchasing of local food much more than it had been before. The markets that we're creating are new markets. Our goal is to increase the number of sales going into the local food sector, to increase the awareness and to increase the opportunities.
Damon hopes whatever options are considered here, don't forget mid to small scale farms, which are facing a lot of cost pressures. A Made in Manitoba app could change the face of transportation in small Manitoba cities. Codago, created by Steinbach resident Justice Oladele, launched it in May. Originally from Nigeria, he landed in Winnipeg 3 years ago to come to Steinbach after a friend suggested he move to the city.
My first questions were very weird at the airport by asking, can I get a train ticket to Steinbach? And they would say, no train ticket to Steinbach. Can I get a plane ticket to Steinbach? No planes in Steinbach. And no Uber, no buses. And I was like, okay.
That revelation inspired him to create an app to help others to get around more easily in communities without public transportation. Oladele used his experience in computer technology to create the app. Codago has already expanded from Steinbach into Winkler. And that's the CBC News for Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
That's Megan Ketchison at your CBC News Desk. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One. I'm Corey Funk, in from Marcy Marcusa. And let's take a look at your weather across the province. Right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at 15, warming up to 23 today. You could expect it to be mainly cloudy, dipping down to 11 overnight, partly cloudy. Then by tomorrow, high of 23, and tomorrow there's about a 30% chance of showers. Looking west to Brandon right now, you're sitting at 10, warming up to 24 today. It'll be mainly sunny today. You expect a few clouds overnight, going down to 11, and tomorrow a high of 25 and sunny. In Steinbach, 16 right now. You're warming up to 23 today. You got about a 30% chance of showers this morning, and it's going down to 11 overnight. Then tomorrow, also a chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high of 24. Thompson, good morning to you. 10 right now, warming up to 22 today with a 60% chance of thunderstorms or rain this afternoon. Yeah, going down to 9 overnight with also a chance of showers or thunderstorms overnight. Similar tomorrow, high of 19 with a chance of showers and thunderstorms. Well, let's check in now with Sierra Sanders, who's in with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. Still pretty quiet out there on the commute. Not hearing about any major incidents or situations that would be causing any backups at the moment. But I did get a call from Jeff, with a G, of course, and he mentioned that he had seen a sign on Logan about a closure, and he didn't really know what was going on there. But I did do some looking into, and so there is going to be a pretty substantial closure there on Logan, specifically heading eastbound. So from Weston Street to McPhillip Street, they're all eastbound lanes. The south side sidewalk will be closed for water work. Eastbound traffic is being asked to use Notre Dame. And that closure starts today and lasts until October 30th. So a little bit of a longer, maybe more substantial closure for some folks out there in that area. So Logan Avenue heading eastbound, all eastbound lanes, the south side sidewalk will be closed for water work. Eastbound traffic is being asked to use Notre Dame Avenue there. So that closure starts today and runs until October 30th. So longer closure there, something you want to keep in mind and maybe adjust your commute here, especially as school gets, I said the S word, school, especially as school gets ready to come back up. You might gets ready to start up again. You might need to find some alternate routes there. As well, another alert there about northbound Main Street. So all northbound lanes of Main Street between Broadway and St. Mary Avenue will be closed for communications work until August 28th. But one northbound lane will remain open at all times for traffic to keep flowing. So this morning, from Broadway to St. Mary, the northbound median lane is open for drivers to get through there. So you could maybe expect to see some backups in that area as the morning continues, especially in that area, and then eastbound Logan too with that closure there. So a couple things to keep in mind there as you're getting up and getting ready to start your commute. But so far, not hearing about any other major situations or backups. But if that changes, would love to hear from you. So give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. That is Sierra Sanders, your studio director. Speaking of signs you see on the road, you may have seen them around town, billboards asking questions about Jesus or pushing back on evolution. Our faith contributor has spoken to some of the people behind those signs. We're going to have that conversation, that story for you coming up after 7 o'clock. But right now, though, Neil Herland is here with your business report. Hi there, Neil.
Good morning, Corey.
So Canadian and U.S. officials are trying to finalize a deal to avoid those harsh 50% tariffs. Where do things stand this morning?
Well, briefings are underway with business leaders and Canadian industry to show them what's on the table and gauge their reaction. Prime Minister Mark Carney's cabinet and the premiers got the first look yesterday. The Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc flew back to Ottawa to brief his colleagues. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says U.S. President Donald Trump's 50% tariff threat is not coming into effect. Canada's chief negotiator Janice Charette is staying in Washington, trying to hammer out the final details before the new deadline, which is now Saturday at 12:01 a.m. Washington time. So everything really needs to come together by tomorrow night. The draft deal has not been released yet to the public, but we're learning dribs and drabs about what's being considered. Carney is asking provincial and territorial premiers to put American booze back on their shelves. Saskatchewan and Alberta already did that earlier this year. In the automotive sector, the deal in the works includes the U.S. lowering its tariff rate on Canadian-made vehicles to 15%. That's down from the current 25%, and there will be an exemption for U.S.-made parts and components in those vehicles, so that could reduce the effective tariff rate nearly in half to around 7.5%. Finally, there's relief from those so-called sectoral tariffs. The American tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum would be lowered to 25% from 50%.
And this potential trade deal coming as the U.S. government just reached a record milestone for spending. So how big is the American national debt right now?
$40 trillion. It almost sounds like a figure out of an Austin Powers movie. The U.S. Treasury confirms the historic debt amount, which has doubled over the last decade. Now, there's a lot of reason for all this spending. The American population is aging. We've got 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day in the U.S., and older people, of course, are living longer. That raises the cost of the U.S. Social Security program and Medicare, which provides health care to Americans over the age of 65. But there's also military spending on the U.S. war against Iran, along with President Trump's tax cuts. And at this rate, there are questions about how sustainable the spending is. One analyst said if nothing changes, the U.S. national debt will be $50 trillion in 6 years from now.
And finally here, a big name in Canadian politics has just landed on Bay Street after her surprise departure from the Ontario cabinet. So who are we talking about?
Caroline Mulroney is heading to the Royal Bank of Canada as vice chair. She's going to start her new role next month. Of course, she's the daughter of the late Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who signed the first North American free trade deal back in 1992. Now, Caroline Mulroney resigned from the Ontario cabinet of Premier Doug Ford back in June. She was most recently president of the Ontario Provincial Treasury Board. Now, normally an Ontario politician getting a job with a major Canadian bank wouldn't make national headlines. But Caroline Mulroney is part of a prominent Canadian political family. She's perfectly bilingual, she's very telegenic, and this new role would give her deeper connections within the Canadian banking world, the kind of experience that would position her perfectly for a future run at the federal Conservative Party leadership.
Thank you very much, Neil.
You're welcome, Corey.
That is Neil Herland with your business news. Well, up next here on the show, as you may have heard, Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi edition has been cancelled after 18 years on the air. Now, some Winnipeg hockey fans in the South Asian community say they're sad to see it go. Param Singh Dhillon says the Punjabi language sportscast was an introduction to the game for his whole family. He spoke more about that with CBC's Alicia Wang.
I'm a big hockey fan. I'm just a proud hockey dad. My daughter plays hockey and I've been watching, I think, almost 15 years now. A proud fan of Winnipeg Jets, so been watching hockey since then.
And what role would you say Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi has played for you specifically?
Well, it was a very good platform, I think, when we came as new immigrants, and even my dad, like, he's in his 70s now, and that was a very good bridge for him to learn about hockey and hear the commentary in his own language, which was so beneficial to know about the game, to know about the culture. And I think this is a part of Canadian culture. Hockey is a Canadian life, right? So that was so beneficial for us as a family, like to put us all together on the hockey night. We just sit together, watch the game, and that was the best experience. I think we have some really, really great memories about that.
Have you continued that tradition since then, like with your own family, for example, to watch Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we want our kids to learn Punjabi and even our language, even though they're born and brought up here in Canada. And that was a great thing because they always communicate that with their grandparents and with us at home too. And then, like, my daughter was so surprised when she learned about the hockey nights in Canada and Punjabi. Like, we met a few other commentators like Avijot, Amrinder, Parminder. Those are my good brothers. And Harpan there, we met them I think a couple months ago, and like she was so excited and she was so enthusiastic about the game, and to learn about hockey nights in Punjabi was happening at all. Like, that was great for her to learn. Yeah.
But like you say, like, it seems like the broadcast was kind of like a bridge for somebody who maybe was new to Canada and could kind of get into the sport that way. Like, I don't know, do you think you would have gotten into hockey or as into hockey if you didn't have this broadcast in Punjabi?
Yes, for sure, yes, because Hockey Nights in Punjabi was so much like a great platform, as I said, like in our own language. Like, people, like, sometimes it's hard for them to learn the other languages, or the commentary sometimes it goes so quick, right? So you need a time to grab onto that. But Hockey Nights in Punjabi was such a great platform to know about the rules, to know about what's happening, and they had their own slogans too, which was Maria shot kita goal and stuff like that. You know, those are the pretty good ones. Like, those fit in our culture pretty good. I could have missed the whole opportunity, even for my daughters too. I think we could have missed that whole thing. I think that was a great platform and a great channel and great TV program to watch. But now it's unfortunate that we are losing it after 18 years.
That was Param Singh Dhillon speaking with CBC's Alicia Wang. Well, 6:46 right now here on Information Radio. And next up here, we got some music for you. Time now for the latest track from Winnipeg indie band Stellar. It's inspired by a line out of a novel by Toni Morrison called Song of Solomon. The line is called The Third Beer, and that's the title of this next song by Stellar.
Don't
Out of Winnipeg, that's the band Stellar with The Third Beer. It's inspired by a line in Toni Morrison's novel Song of Solomon. Actually, I looked it up. It's actually got quite a little bit of story to it. It's just 4 lines here, all that inspired. I'll read it for you because it's kind of interesting. It takes place at Christmas time, actually. It's Milkman quickly buys presents for his family, but isn't sure what to get Hagar. It's been more than 12 years since he began his relationship with her, and he's beginning to tire of her. She's the third beer, the drink one drinks simply because it's there. He looks for a gift for her, but plans to end their relationship before the end of the year. Wow, I should take a look at that novel. Well, 6:50 right now here on Information Radio. And next up here on the show, we're talking science. Scientists are exploring a new way to fight cancer using personalized vaccines. These vaccines are designed to train the immune system to recognize and attack cancer cells. And just this week, Moderna and Merck announced an mRNA vaccine that has shown positive results in a late-stage melanoma trial. And for more on this and how these vaccines work, we're joined by Dr. Christopher Labos. He's a cardiologist and epidemiologist. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how promising are cancer vaccines as the technology continues to develop?
Well, I think they're very promising. I mean, we forget that before the pandemic, when people talked about mRNA vaccines, they were talking about them as a cancer therapy. They were repurposed during the pandemic to make vaccines against COVID. But the reality is this is really the fulfillment of what their original promise was, which is to create a new form of immunotherapy to fight potentially several different types of cancers. The main one now in this trial was to fight melanoma.
Is this vaccine being tested by Moderna and Merck supposed to prevent skin cancer before you get it, or is it treatment for people who already have it?
It's treatment. I think the word vaccine tends to be a little bit misleading for some people because we think about it as, fighting off an infection and sort of not getting sick in the first place. But what it's actually doing and what all vaccines do is they stimulate your immune system. So it can be to fight off an infection, but it can also be to fight cancer. And so what these vaccines are doing, because it's basically a personalized vaccine, so it's you take somebody's tumor, you cut it up, you sequence it, you put that genetic sequence into the mRNA vaccine, you give it to the patient, and now that patient's immune system reads the genetic sequence and creates immune cells to fight off that tumor with that genetic sequence. So you're basically created a personalized therapy there. And that, I think, is a very effective way, or potentially very, very effective way to treat the cancer, because now your immune system is going to attack your cancer directly.
And what's interesting is these are personalized vaccines. So how practical is it to develop a vaccine tailored to an individual patient's cancer?
Well, it's certainly doable, and we, proved to ourselves during the pandemic that we can mass-produce mRNA vaccines. So it's obviously a different situation, and now you're doing it on a person-by-person basis. But it is technically feasible. The issue is going to become not can you do it, but at what price can you do it, and how much benefit do you extract from it? And that is stuff. Those are questions we don't have answers to yet, because all we have is the top-line results from the trial. So we don't know if this therapy will improve survival by 1 month or 6 months or 1 year. And that's going to lead to a very, very different calculus when you start looking at the cost effectiveness. So there's still, I think, some unanswered questions about how we would roll this out once it gets approved. But we know that it works. It's now really a question of how can we use it within the framework of our healthcare system.
And whether, I guess, pharmaceutical companies would see it as, a good business move to actually take the time to produce these personalized vaccines. Can I imagine it must be costly and expensive, especially if they are so specific?
Yes, potentially. And this is a problem with many new therapies that are, harder to produce. I mean, I think a lot of people still think of medication as in the same way that they think about their blood pressure medication, where a company can produce you sort of, 1 million tablets in one production run, and they cost like a fraction of a penny each. Producing these therapies, especially immunotherapies, they are more complicated. They do take more time. And that's partly what determines the fact that they are so expensive. Part of it, too, is the rarity of diseases. When there are rarer diseases, companies price their treatments higher because they need to recoup their investment because there's fewer patients who are going to need them. So there's a very complex calculus that goes into drug pricing, and that really, I think, is going to be one of the main determining factors here for, do we actually start using these things? Because, if they are very, very expensive and they only improve survival by 1 month, that may not be the most efficient use of limited healthcare resources, to give an example.
So this study right now, specifically for melanoma, but could this approach eventually be used against other types of cancer?
Oh, yes, and there's actually quite a few trials already in the pipeline. So Merck has a whole cancer vaccine research pipeline in place, and there are trials ongoing now for bladder cancer, for lung cancer. So, in the next maybe couple of years, we could start seeing results from those trials as well. So I think there's a lot of interest and excitement in this field because the potential is so high, because this is not a treatment per se. This is more of a treatment platform that you can use to develop all kinds of specific treatments. So there is, I think, this could in theory be used in many different types of cancers. We'll have to wait for the final results to prove that it's effective, but I think the potential is there, and that's why there's so much excitement.
And it's interesting because just yesterday we had Dr. Raj Bhardwaj on the show talking about an mRNA vaccine for the flu. So how do you see mRNA vaccines being used in the future?
Well, I think here's the thing. mRNA technology has a lot of advantages to it. I mean, one of the reasons why the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines became the default vaccines for much of the pandemic is because they were so easy to produce and they could be produced so quickly. So there's a lot of advantages to mRNA technology, speed, versatility. You can use it for multiple different things. So I think you are going to see more and more of it. It's the real limiting factor is probably going to come down to cost, especially when you start getting into sort of rare, more specific therapies like the cancer immunotherapies.
Well, Dr. Labos, thanks for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You take care.
Dr. Christopher Labos is a cardiologist and epidemiologist. We reached him this morning in Montreal. Well, 6:57 right now. Let's check in with Megan Ketchison with a look at news headlines.
A man who fled persecution in Somalia has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for human smuggling in Canada. We hear about Abdi Ali, who pleaded guilty to human smuggling, and the cases were involving in the winter of 2024 when he helped foreign nationals cross into Canada from the U.S. on foot. We'll hear what the judge had to say and what could happen when he's released. And Manitoba's only food hub questions how the federal government will balance fair prices for local farmers while tempering food inflation. And we'll have more at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Just a traffic heads up for you. Main Street, there's a construction zone on right now from Broadway to St. Mary Avenue. The northbound median lane of Main Street between Broadway and St. Mary is the only one that is currently open. So do look out for that this morning. If you see anything else going on your commute, you can give Sierra a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093. Well, coming up this next hour here on Information Radio, you've probably heard of speed dating. But what about speed friending? We're going to meet one of the organizers of a new Winnipeg event and talking about not only, how speed friending works, but why are people having so much trouble making friends these days? That conversation coming up. Also, you may have seen them around town. There's billboards asking questions about Jesus or pushing back on evolution. Our faith contributor, John Longhurst, actually spoke to some of the people behind those billboards. So we're going to hear about the story behind them coming up this next hour on the show. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One. We'll be back after World Report. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
Palestinian families describe being trapped in their homes after Israeli settlers arrived on Sunday.
There's a growing surge in Israeli settler violence and occupation of Palestinian land in the West Bank. Coming up, we'll speak to a man who traveled back to the West Bank, where his brother and nephew were one of the families trapped in a home he owns, which was surrounded by settlers. On The Current. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Mike Wise. Canadian and U.S. negotiators are working to solidify a new trade deal as the clock ticks down to tomorrow night's extended deadline. U.S. President Donald Trump paused plans to impose punishing 50% tariffs on a host of Canadian goods. Prime Minister Mark Carney spent yesterday briefing Cabinet and the premiers on where negotiations stand and what steps may come next, amid some concern over potential Canadian concessions. The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian joins us now from Ottawa. So, Rafi, what is the latest?
And Mike, Canada is getting some way toward the deal it's been trying to reach since the start of this trade war with the U.S. Sectoral tariffs should be lowered. Now, by how much, we're not clear yet. One source says the levies on steel and aluminum are going from 50 down to 25%. The Canadian side was asking for something in the vicinity of 10 to 12%. Another question, what Ottawa has conceded in return. U.S. President Donald Trump suggested yesterday American farmers are winners in this coming deal. That's prompted concerns on this side of the border that supply management protections for dairy may have been altered or removed, though the federal government insists that's not the case. Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday spent the afternoon first briefing his cabinet ministers and then his provincial and territorial counterparts. He's asked provinces to get rid of the ban on sales of American liquor should the deal come through.
Okay, so what loose ends do we still need to see tied up before tomorrow night's deadline?
The last details are still being firmed up. We do know U.S.-Canada Trade Relations Minister Dominic LeBlanc is back in Canada after spending more than a week in D.C. Janice Charette, the chief negotiator on the Canadian side, remains there to finalize the agreement, all as a midnight Friday deadline gets closer. Should something not work out, that's when more threatened tariffs by the White House could kick in, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Rafi.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reporting from Ottawa. While trade negotiations have brought more time to find common ground, in Quebec, the ongoing trade tensions are expected to loom over the province's soon-to-be-called fall election. The CBC's Alexander Silberman explains.
And we already have too much uncertainty. This is not what Quebecers want. This is not what Quebecers are asking for.
Quebec Premier Christine Fréchette, leader of the Coalition Avenir Québec, reacting to a policy pivot by the separatist Parti québécois. Leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon says a referendum is still coming if his party wins the fall election, but not until U.S. President Donald Trump leaves office. Quebecers deserve a calm climate for discussions about their future, he says. The policy shift comes as parties try to appeal to Quebec voters feeling economic anxiety. The last round of tariffs were a major blow to the province's economy, and the trade war is once again top of mind, just days away from the expected start of the fall election.
And we will stand up for their jobs, for the economy.
Christopher Skeet is Quebec's Minister of International Relations.
Unfortunately, the world is increasingly unstable, and we're going to have to get used to that.
Amid the instability, the Parti québécois is leading in the polls, with the Liberals close behind, and the governing CAQ trailing in third. The Quebec election will be held no later than October 5th. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Montreal.
Overnight strikes on Kyiv have left at least 12 people dead. Firefighters rushed to put out the flames in a residential building. It is one of several hit during Russian strikes. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure. Vitaly Klitschko is Kyiv's mayor.
More than 4,000 buildings in our hometown was destroyed. Tonight, in this minute, we can talk about 12 people, civilians. I'm talking just about civilians.
Officials say Russia used drones along with cruise and ballistic missiles during the attack. More than 40 people were injured. Kyiv's mayor is joining the chorus of voices calling for more air defense help from Ukraine's allies.
We need ammunition, we need anti-missile systems, we need support from our partners because it's protection for our civilians, protection for it's life of our citizens, life of civilians people.
Vitaly Klitschko is called for Friday to be observed as a day of mourning. Israel is rolling out tenders for parts of the occupied West Bank. Several countries are condemning the move that would essentially cut off the northern West Bank from the south. Many opponents say the move would isolate East Jerusalem and put an end to any plans for a two-state solution for Palestinians. The CBC's Crystal Gamansing has more on the so-called E1 development.
Without apologizing, we are practically killing the dangerous idea of a Palestinian state, said Israeli far-right minister Bezalel Smotrich. Expanding the decades-old settlements enterprise was part of his speech last month when he launched his election campaign. Tenders for the controversial E1 project to build roughly 1,200 homes will be accepted until October 19th, just days before Israel's general election. In a statement, Ed Miliband, the UK's foreign secretary, said it would cut across the heart of Palestine and risk separating the West Bank from East Jerusalem, which would endanger the viability of a two-state solution. The project would allow for thousands of Israelis to live and work in a 12-square-kilometer stretch of illegally occupied Palestinian territory. Palestinians and Israeli activists have marched in opposition, and court challenges have drawn attention to E1 but haven't stopped it. Peace Now, an anti-settlement watchdog, is accusing the government of trying to push through contracts before the election, which they say would make it harder for the next government to cancel the construction. It would also displace those in more than a dozen long-standing Palestinian and Bedouin communities. Today, Gideon Sa'ar, Israel's foreign affairs minister, posted a statement to X rebuking the UK. It says, in part, Britain itself controls territorial colonies thousands of miles from its shores. It is absurd for Britain to lecture the Jewish people about where they may live in their historic tiny homeland. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
The founder of fallen Chinese real estate giant Evergrande has been sentenced to life in prison for widespread financial fraud. A court in southern China handed down the ruling today. It found the real estate titan guilty of inflating assets, concealing liabilities, and orchestrating extensive bribery. Companies linked to the developer were also fined more than $2 billion. Evergrande collapsed under hundreds of billions of dollars in debt, triggering a property crisis that continues to weigh on China's economy. Some expecting parents in Ontario say they are traveling hours for routine prenatal ultrasounds. As the CBC's Kendra Segan reports, the issue is long wait lists and a shortage of sonographers.
You just have to literally call every week, every day. I had no luck, so that's why my story is the way it is.
That's expecting mother Sylvia Lopez. She's 20 weeks pregnant and lives in London, Ontario. But she's been traveling more than an hour and a half to Milton for her routine ultrasound appointments.
It's transportation, it's logistics, it's money, it's gas money, it's everything.
Lopez says it's not for a lack of trying. She's called for ultrasounds locally and in surrounding cities. She has been told that imaging centers are fully booked. Recent data from the Fraser Institute, a think tank, suggests the wait for an ultrasound in Ontario is 4 weeks. That's lower than the national average of more than 5. But doctors say days matter for expecting parents who book appointments during specific pregnancy milestones.
This has been a long-standing challenge within the healthcare system.
Sonography Canada spokesperson Tara Chegwin says more than 10 million ultrasounds happen across the country each year. It's getting hard to keep up with that demand, especially with a 20% sonographer vacancy in Ontario.
So even though the capacity within the system to provide more ultrasounds has grown, the demand has also grown.
Chegwin says there are initiatives to fill the sonographer gap, including international recruitment and new educational programs.
If there's any moms out there that are experiencing the same as the story as I am, but just let them know they're not alone.
Lopez is reminding fellow parents in limbo to plan ahead and know a wait is in store. Kendra Segan, CBC News, London, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. One of the top stories on our website right now, Prince Harry and Meghan moving back to the United Kingdom 6 years after stepping away from royal life. You can find that at cbcnews.ca. I'm Mike Wise. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in from Marcy Marcusa. 16 degrees right now in Winnipeg at the Forks, heading for a cloudy high today of 23. Well, coming up this hour on the show, are you prepared to meet Jesus? That's the text on at least one billboard that was up around Winnipeg. Our faith contributor has been looking into who's behind those billboards and what they're hoping to accomplish. That conversation coming up just ahead here. Also this hour on the show, if you're in the market for new friends, speed friending may be the answer. We're going to speak to the organizer behind one of those speed friending events. And later this hour, the high price of groceries seems to be on everyone's mind, and the federal government says a concept called food hubs or food terminals will help make it easier to feed families in Canada. We're going to hear from Manitoba's only food hub about how they work and what they think of Ottawa's plan. So stay tuned for that. But right now, though, 7:11, let's check in with Megan Ketchison with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Health Canada has cut down the number of serious incidents involving plasma donors from 27 to 9. It says it did the revisions after reviewing reports from clinics such as the for-profit company Grifols this summer. We'll hear from a health policy expert who says that raises a lot of questions. And a Made in Manitoba app could change the face of transportation in small Manitoba cities. Kojiko was created by a Steinbach man, launched in May. Originally from Nigeria, the creator found no public transportation when he arrived. That revelation inspired him to create an app to help others get around more easily in communities without public transportation. Now more at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Well, another mild day ahead for us here in Winnipeg. Right now, as mentioned, we're at 16, heading for a high of 23. It's going to be mainly cloudy out there today, dipping down to 11 overnight, partly cloudy, and then tomorrow there's a 30% chance of showers and even thunderstorms with a high of 23. And I gotta say, last night going to bed with that pitter patter, I think there was a little bit of thunder rumbling in the distance. Really no better sleeping conditions out there. Hey Sierra, I don't know if you had rain where you are.
I think I had a little bit of rain. I'm in the Osborne Village,
okay.
So I think we had a little bit of rain there
for
sure. It was, yeah. I didn't hear the thunder though. Maybe I fell asleep before it started rolling in.
Probably a good call. I was up a little later. So let's hear what's going on in the commute.
Yeah, so far it's been pretty quiet on the commuter line this morning. Haven't gotten very many calls out there, so it sounds like things are moving along pretty smoothly out there. But just a couple of road closures that you might want to keep in mind. Eastbound Logan, there's a new closure that is starting today. So all eastbound lanes, the south side sidewalk will be closed for water work. So that closure starts today, August 20th, and will run, I should say, until October 30th of this year. So a little bit of a longer substantial closure, and that closure is between Weston Street and McPhillips Street. So quite a substantial closure and for a long period of time there. As well as we've been mentioning this morning, all northbound lanes of Main Street between Broadway and St. Mary Avenue will be closed for communications work until the 28th. That's August. But one northbound lane will be open at all times for traffic. And today that northbound median lane is currently open for drivers there. So there may be some backups in those areas that you want to keep in mind, or might push you to find an alternate route this morning as well. But so far, it's been pretty quiet out there in terms of any major backups or situations that you want to keep an eye out for. But if that does change, I'd love to hear about it. So give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, you may have seen billboards in Winnipeg that say things like, Jesus is alive, or are you prepared to meet Jesus? And after you die, you will meet God. And one that is up now says, in the beginning, God created. With a strike through an evolution, graphic. 2 billboards that are currently found in the city are on Henderson Highway near Poplar Avenue and on Balmoral Street by Cumberland. They include a phone number to call 844-FIND-TRUTH. Have you ever wondered who is behind them and why they do it? Well, we asked our faith contributor, John Longhurst, to look into it for us. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
So who is behind these billboards?
Well, you might be surprised, and the listeners might be surprised to learn that it comes from an Amish Mennonite group called Christian Aid Ministries. It's based in rural Ontario, and it's funded by Amish and conservative Mennonite denominations and individuals. Now, in Canada, they've been doing these billboards since 2015. In the United States, they've been doing them since 2007. And currently, they have about 50 billboards across Canada in every province except Quebec. There's 2 in Manitoba, both in Winnipeg. In the U.S., they have over 1,700 billboards. As for cost, and people might be wondering what this costs, they pay over $900,000 a year for those 50 billboards, which works out to about $18,000 a year per billboard or $1,500 per month. And the money that is used to pay for those billboards comes from donors, comes from people who contribute to what they call their billboard evangelism program.
So then why are they taking this approach? What are they hoping to accomplish with it?
Well, I posed that question to Ryan Martin, who works for Christian Aid. He does public relations for the organization.
Yeah, for the same reason of reaching our local countrymen with the gospel. We're discovering that there is just a lot of questions, and our billboard messages are designed to reach people with the questions and the issues that are plaguing them.
So they view Canadian culture as a society on wheels, as they put it. Many Canadians spend an hour or 2 each weekday commuting to and from work or school. And for them, that means that millions of people have an opportunity to see these billboards each year. And they see that as a prime opportunity, and I'll quote them here, to plant the seed of truth in the hearts of people.
So then why do they think this strategy is actually going to be effective? We get bombarded by billboards, every day.
Oh, that's such a good question. Yes, you're absolutely right. We see messages and signs and billboards all the time as we're driving or doing anything around our lives each day. But they believe this approach works because their messages are different from the normal ones that people see. So as Ryan puts it,
because the message isn't neutral, because the message connects with the soul. And a message that connects with the soul has a much greater impact than what I call neutral messages. The messages are not neutral. They regard truth. And so when you invoke the name of Jesus Christ or a biblical truth that resonates deep down within a soul, that's different than if you're advertising pizza or pickup trucks, right?
And the billboard, as mentioned earlier, it also includes a number people can call. Are they getting actually any calls in response at all?
Yeah, actually they are. Ryan told me that in the U.S. they average over 70 calls a day. And here in Canada, they get about 4 calls a day. And here's what it sounds like when you call.
Our call center is currently closed for training purposes. We would be glad to talk with you and will be available after 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To learn more about 83 for Truth, press 2. To hear an explanation of God's plan of salvation, press 8.
And if you press 8, here's a little bit of what you might hear.
From the beginning, it was God's plan to have a close relationship with all people. Adam and Eve heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. Man's relationship with God was perfect and complete, without any walls and hindrances.
So Ryan told me that about half of those who call that number choose to speak with someone in person, and the calls are answered by about 30 volunteers across Canada. They listen to the callers, they answer their questions, and if they want, they pray with them. And also, if the callers want, they connect them with conservative Mennonite churches in their own area if they would like some follow-up.
And I imagine this probably isn't the only thing this organization does. What else? Do they do anything else?
Absolutely. And that's something else that's important about them. They're actively involved in humanitarian work around the world. And here in Canada, they send volunteers to help people who've been caught in natural disasters. And that includes here in Manitoba. Last year, volunteers were in Lac du Bonnet. They were helping people clean up after the wildfires there. And this summer, they sent volunteers to the Swan River area to do mucking out of basements after the flooding. And that's a very hard and dirty job. And right now, they're exploring how they can help in the aftermath of wildfires in Northwest Ontario. So for them, the billboards and the disaster response work are all part of what it means to be Christian. And I'll let Ryan put it this way.
And it's a practical way to show the love of God. We see that over and over again. You know, people that were not interested in the gospel because they believe that church members are just, you know, people that are just do their religious duty and they're really no different than anyone else. But to see this outpouring of love and support, it makes people reconsider their faith. And that is really exciting to see.
Well, thanks for looking into this, John.
You bet. Thank you.
Contributor John Longhurst.
Feel that? That's the thrill of the Northern Super League. And it's back on CBC Gem with 6 fierce clubs battling all season long for glory. From coast to coast, Canada's first professional women's soccer league is bringing the heat. For the fans who live for the roar of the crowd, the last-minute winner, and the moments that make sports unforgettable, this is your season. Watch the Northern Super League all season on CBC Gem.
7:21 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One. Well, as you've been hearing in the news, details of a new trade deal between Canada and the United States are beginning to emerge. Sources say Canada could see U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum drop from 50% to 25%. And effective tariffs on most Canadian-made cars could drop to 7.5%. But unless you're a business professor, it's hard to know just what those numbers mean for Canada's economy. Luckily, CBC's David Common asked someone who is. Ian Lee is a professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business, and here's what he had to say about that new trade deal.
From what we do know, it does look like compromises have been made by both sides, which is the entire point of negotiations. The idea that one side's going to go in and get everything they want and the other side's going to get nothing is not a negotiation. That's a fairy tale. It doesn't exist in the real world. Whether, you know, in country negotiations or corporate negotiations with suppliers, or for that matter, in personal divorces, you know, both sides have to compromise. And from what we've seen so far, I think it looks like it's going to be a good deal. We need the Stanley Cup of these negotiations is access to the largest economy on planet Earth, $32 trillion. And so, yes, we want a good deal. Yes, we want to give up as little as possible. But the prize is not whether we save this sector or that sector from another 2 or 3 or 5%. The prize is whether we have continued open access to our largest trading partner, literally next door, 60 minutes from the Canadian border, 60 minutes from most Canadian cities, to the largest economy. And it appears that we're going to land there in that sweet spot.
Of course, Ian, we have that already. We had it before. It's called CUSMA. They call it USMCA. Yes. It's still in effect. It's a comprehensive deal that's supposed to deal with all of these things. What even is this proposed deal? Does it replace CUSMA? Is it on top of that? What is it?
It looks like it's going to replace CUSMA. I completely acknowledge your point and agree, and I know a lot of Canadians say, wait a minute, we already had a deal. What on earth are we doing talking about a new deal? Well, the answer is that, and I don't mean this at all flippantly or facetiously, the world has changed. And I don't mean only Donald Trump. I think there's such a focus on this individual who is going to leave office in 2 years and a bit. We're doing this for the long term. We are going to be joined at the hip along that long border, 8,800 kilometers, for centuries to come. So we're negotiating for the future, for the long-term greater good of Canada. And so this is the reality we should be facing. And the overarching around all this, these negotiations that nobody wants to talk about, is the looming impact of China. which has a 1.4 trillion net export advantage over the rest of the world. And their plan, the official plan of China, is to double the number of exports to the rest of the world, which is going to devastate economies around the world. So this is actually part of a much bigger conversation, I think, about where the world is going on trade in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades.
That's Ian Lee. He's a professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, speaking there with CBC's David Common. Well, time now is 7:24, and time for morning sports now with Scott Regehr. Good morning.
Hey, Corey.
So it seems like it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back these days for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, it does. After a win Tuesday in Tampa, they lost there last night, and the defeat, Corey, is largely down to 2 errors in the outfield. They were both made by Jesus Sanchez, who dropped balls, well, that most would have caught. The one in the 4th inning with Tampa's bases loaded was the most egregious. Sanchez was running into shallow left field to collect what seemed like a routine fly ball, and then he took his eye off of it and ended up missing it by 5 or 6 feet. 2 runs scored on that play, which ended up making the difference in a 1-run Tampa victory. Jays starting pitcher Max Scherzer was asked whether he felt Sanchez's defense let the team down.
I'm not going to sit here and point fingers and talk about those things. I look at myself and I take account for my mistakes. 2 walks that's not acceptable. Go back to the first, a hanging slider, that's not acceptable. So, I'm a team guy. I don't sit here and point fingers and talk about other people's mistakes. I talk about my mistakes.
To be fair, Corey, Tampa's Tropicana Field is brutal for outfielders. It has lower than they should be catwalks and a white roof that the ball gets lost in if you take your eye off of it for even a second. So, fortunately, the Jays are done with that stadium after the series finale this afternoon. That is, unless they happen to meet the Rays in the playoffs. And Toronto has to make those first. After last night's loss, they're a game behind Minnesota for the final wildcard berth.
Just make the baseball orange. Easy peasy, no problem. Just like
great
just
idea.
Like ping pong. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got that idea
we'll
from
put a
Marty
Fox
Supreme.
tracker on it, too, for TV watchers.
Up next here, let's turn to golf, where the Canadian Women's Open gets underway today in Edmonton.
Yeah, and record rainfall over the summer in northern Alberta, Corey, means the grounds crew at Royal Mayfair Course have been in a race against time to prepare things. The precipitations also led to a very buggy environment. Defending champion Brooke Henderson, who grew up on the mosquito-ridden banks of the Rideau River in Smiths Falls, Ontario, says, the bugs aren't so bad. And she says she'd rather focus on things like the 17th hole anyhow. That's the rink hole, where just like we see at the Canadian Men's Open, the tee box is in a hockey-themed environment. There are boards set up around it with course officials wearing referees' striped uniforms, reminding the gallery, among other things, to keep quiet.
It's sometimes tough to play that hole and really focus, so it's unlike anything you've ever experienced playing golf. I think it's super fun for all of the fans to come out and support and bang on the boards, and people chant, "Oh, Canada." They sing our national anthem. I feel like they're just watching an Oilers game, which is pretty cool. It's just a lot of sense of pride and excitement and just trying to enjoy the atmosphere and the energy as much as I can.
Let's hope the group of Canadians at this Open, Corey, which numbers 15 strong, have better luck than the Oilers have of late. Henderson's a 2-time champion at this event. She won last year in Mississauga. She will tee off at 2:21 Central Time this afternoon.
You should also be allowed to body check that hole in golf.
Make things a lot more interesting. Happy Gilmore would be on board with that.
100%. Finally here, let's talk the Bombers. The Bombers are busy preparing now for a game tomorrow in Edmonton.
Yeah, Winnipeg getting set to travel to take on one of the, it feels strange to say this, given what's happened over the last decade, one of the best teams in the league, in the Edmonton Elks. So a little strange considering they've gone through so much lately in that city. There's the name change, the new ownership, attendance issues have all plagued Edmonton, not to mention the poor play. It has been a decade since they've had any sort of success this late in the season. But this year, led by their second-year coach Mark Killam, Edmonton's one of the best teams in the league, only behind Montreal. A welcome change from years past, according to Bombers head coach Mike O'Shea.
We'd play there, and it just didn't feel like it should. And it's been turned around. It's good. It's good for our league. I can separate the two, and I can be happy for a fellow coach who I've been to a ton of meetings with and hung around and had beers with, whatever. I can be happy for him too. Doesn't mean we don't want to beat him. Just I understand the value and the importance of the health of franchises and to the health of the league.
I mean, I grew up in Vancouver. I went to many, many BC Lions games over the years, and they always got thumped by both the Bombers and Edmonton. Those are two franchises that need to be good. It just feels right when that's the case. So I'm on board with what Mike O'Shea said there. Edmonton hosting the Bombers tomorrow. Meanwhile, Week 13, Corey, kicks off tonight with the aforementioned Alouettes hosting Ottawa. At the halfway point of the season, the Red Blacks still looking for their first win of the season. If you're wondering, no team in the modern CFL has ever finished a season winless. Could it happen?
We'll find out. Well, thank you very much, Scott.
You betcha.
That is Scott Reguer with your morning sports. Quick traffic alert for you here. Northbound Disraeli, just down to one lane only right now due to a fire that's coming from the city. All northbound lanes are closed except for the median lane. So you want to find an alternative way to get over the Disraeli Bridge or to get over the river if you can. We'll keep updated on that. You can give us a call if you have any updates on what you're seeing there. You can call Sierra 204-788-3093. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 7:30. Mostly cloudy and 16. Mainly cloudy today and a high of 23. A man who once fled persecution abroad now knows his fate for human smuggling. The CBC's Bryce Hoy reports.
Abdi Ali has been sentenced to 4 years in prison. The 33-year-old pleaded guilty to helping to smuggle people into Canada. In 2 cases, Ali picked up 4 nationals who had crossed from the U.S. into Manitoba on foot amid harsh winter conditions in 2024. Ali himself fled persecution in Somalia. He has since started a family in Winnipeg. His lawyer said Ali committed the offenses in a desire to help people facing circumstances like he once did. The judge underscored the dangers of the activity and also suggested with a wife and children, Ali has every reason to never do it again. With time served, he has another 500 days behind bars and could also face deportation. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Many reports of plasma donors left hospitalized or with other serious conditions were misclassified. That according to Health Canada. The government says it revised down a list of serious adverse events from 27 to 9 after a verification exercise this summer. The incidents date back to 2018. Health Canada says for-profit company Grifols flagged that it had reported many incidents that did not meet that criteria. Andrew Longhurst with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the revision is bound to raise a lot of questions.
The point of the reporting system is you don't get to go in after the fact. Show us why these changes are being made now, at a time when these kinds of changes raise serious concerns about the integrity of this regulatory approach.
Grifols directed questions about reporting criteria to Health Canada, saying it continues to work with regulators. Canadian and U.S. negotiators are working to solidify a new trade deal as the clock ticks down to tomorrow night's extended deadline. U.S. President Donald Trump paused plans to impose punishing 50% tariffs on a host of Canadian goods. Rafi Bouchikanian tells us where things stand.
Canada is getting some way toward the deal it's been trying to reach since the start of this trade war with the U.S. Sectoral tariffs should be lowered. Now, by how much, we're not clear yet. One source says the levies on steel and aluminum are going from 50 down to 25%. The Canadian side was asking for something in the vicinity of 10 to 12%. Another question, what Ottawa has conceded in return. U.S. President Donald Trump suggested yesterday American farmers are winners in this coming deal. That's prompted concerns on this side of the border that supply management protections for dairy may have been altered or removed, though the federal government insists that's not the case. Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday spent the afternoon first briefing his cabinet ministers and then his provincial and territorial counterparts. He's asked provinces to get rid of the ban on sales of American liquor should the deal come through. Rafi Bouchikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Manitoba's only food hub questions how the federal government will balance fair prices for local farmers while tempering food inflation. Food hubs and food terminals are wholesale marketplaces where independent grocers and restaurants can buy in bulk directly from farmers and producers. Ottawa wants to help build or expand 10 food hubs and 2 terminals across Canada. It's part of a national strategy to make food more affordable and produce more of it more in the country. The idea is that grocers can bypass large retailers and have more options to pick from, potentially lowering prices that can be passed on to consumers. Fireweed Food Co-op based is Manitoba's only food hub. Katie Damon is the co-chair.
We are increasing the purchasing of local food much more than it had been before. The markets that we're creating are new markets. Our goal is to increase the number of sales going into the local food sector, to increase the awareness and to increase the opportunities.
Damon hopes that whatever option is considered here doesn't forget mid to small scale farms, which are facing a lot of cost pressures. And a man in Steinbach is hoping to fill a transportation gap in smaller Manitoba cities. 3 years ago, Justice Oladele landed in Manitoba after a friend suggested he move to Steinbach. When he arrived, he was surprised to find how few transportation options there were. Instead of complaining about the problem, he decided to create a solution. So he used his background in computer science to create a ride-share app with a focus on underserved communities.
People want to go for grocery shopping, people want to pick their children from school, people want to go on hiking and all that. So Kodogo is a tool that helps people move easily without a fear of how would you get back to where you're going.
Kodogo launched in Steinbach in May and has gained 360 users through word of mouth. It launched in Winkler last week. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
That's Megan Ketchison at your CBC News Desk. I'm Corey Funk in for Marcy Marcusa. Let's take a look at your regional forecast here in Manitoba. Right now, Winnipeg at the Forks, we're sitting at 16, heading for a high of 23 today. Expected to be mainly cloudy most of the day. We're going to dip down to 11 overnight. It's be partly cloudy. Then tomorrow, a high of 23 with about a 30% chance of showers. Looking to Brandon right now, 9 right now in Brandon, heading for a high of 24, mainly sunny, dipping down to 11 overnight with a sunny high tomorrow of 25. In Steinbach, you're sitting at 16 right now, heading for a high of 23 today. There's about a 30% chance of showers this morning. You're dipping down to 11 overnight, and then 24 tomorrow, again with a 30% chance of showers or thunder showers tomorrow. In Thompson, you're at 9, heading for a high today of 22. You got about a 6% chance of showers or even thunder showers this afternoon. You're going down to 9 overnight as well, a chance of showers and thunderstorms overnight. And then Friday, a high of 19 tomorrow with, again, a 30% chance of showers or thunderstorms. Let's check in now with Sierra Sanders, who's in with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. Pretty quiet on the commute so far, but really we're keeping an eye on that fire there, northbound Disraeli. I actually initially got a call from Michelle, and now our news team is on it as well. It is pretty substantial blaze there that they're fighting there. It looks to be an abandoned home there, boarded up home, I should say, that they are tending to there. So northbound Disraeli is reduced to 1 lane only due to that fire there. So all northbound lanes are closed except for that median lane. So you want to use caution if you are heading that way as fire crews work to distinguish that fire there. But yeah, it's basically at the base of the Disraeli Bridge. So just as you're about to go over the Disraeli Bridge heading northbound is when you're going to see that situation there. So that's really what we're keeping an eye on right now. But other than that, it's been a pretty quiet commute. But if that changes and there's a new situation you want to let me know about, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number's 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. That's studio director Sierra Sanders. Well, up next here on the show, many people find it hard to make friends as an adult. Well, enter speed friending. Think speed dating, but instead of looking for love, people are looking for, well, friends without benefits. And to give us the lowdown, we're joined in studio by Jenna Hariprasad. She is the founder and organizer of Bestie Studios, and her group is hosting a speed friending event tomorrow night here in Winnipeg. Good morning.
Morning.
So how are you inspired to start speed friending here in Winnipeg?
Well, I think it kind of stemmed from my own experience of really struggling to make friends. I think that a lot of people don't think about after the pandemic that a lot of young people really are struggling with loneliness, and it's so difficult to connect just in organic and kind of natural ways in person.
Well, why do you think it is so hard to make friends in this particular day and age?
Well, I really think it kind of attributes to the lack of third spaces that we have, but then also kind of that little bit, again, just like shortly after the pandemic and during the pandemic of sort of that like moving everything online kind of made people like lose that confidence to want to approach people in person. And again, sort of that like judgment and fear of being like, again, judged.
So you said you had some trouble finding friends. What did you find, and did you eventually find some friends?
Yes. I mean, yes. Although I was looking for more. But yeah, I think, again, kind of going through university during the pandemic, like I never met anybody in person. And so it's like, how do you really connect with people in organic spaces that you would maybe in like the food hall or sort of like libraries or study areas? And then, yeah, so I was sort of inspired to create Speed Friending and Bestie Studios. I have made many friends now from it, selfishly.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, some of my best friends. But yeah, I have made friends, and it's great.
So what gave the idea specifically to do speed friending?
Well, I had gone to speed dating, and I was like, this is horrible. I hate this. Personally, I was like, I'm not enjoying this. Yeah. And I was like, I'd love to go to a place where I can actually just like make friends and sort of we're all there with that common goal. I think speed dating is great in the sense that it's like, you know, everybody's sort of on the same playing field. Like they're all single, they're all kind of looking for love, and there's no real place like that for friends. Again, it's kind of that like judgment of loneliness.
So why do you think this would work for friends versus speed dating, which you didn't have good
experience
with?
No. Because I think, again, it kind of just breaks down that barrier and sort of gives people an even playing field of like, oh, I'm also looking for friends, you're looking for friends. And so you already have that in common where it's like, you're not being judged for that. That's actually kind of a strength that we're both looking for this. And I think it gives people a very like low stakes environment to kind of just meet new people. And if you don't like anybody, you can just leave. And you're not going to like see them again and be judged for it.
Right, exactly. So tell me a little bit about how these speed friending sessions work.
So typically they do kind of follow the same format as a speed dating. Folks are given some questions, and then you have like 5 minutes to talk to each other before you rotate. Everything is anonymous during the session, just for like privacy reasons, but also because I want people to get to the interesting part. Like,
so people don't say their names or anything like
exactly,
that? Okay.
Exactly. No names, no jobs, no ages right off the bat. Just because I want to know, like, what is your favorite color? Or do you prefer orange juice or apple juice? Like,
it's interesting that you keep jobs out of it too, right?
Yes.
Because that's also a big thing. Like, the first question off is like, hey, what do you do for a living? But that kind of makes you pushes you to go further than that, right? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, and so you've actually held a few of these so far, all over Manitoba. What have you noticed? How have they worked out so far?
I mean, people seem to enjoy them. I have a lot of people come back, which is great because, again, they are my friends as well. And then, yeah, usually we either go for like dinner after or karaoke or some kind of like second location. So people seem to be enjoying them.
And who are the people that are showing up? Is it often people Gen Z, or are you noticing a range or some specific demographics of folks?
To be honest, I was really surprised. I had a lot of older folks actually reach out and want to do this. So folks in their like 50s and 60s. Being like, oh my gosh, you should do one for us. Or, yeah, like kind of Gen Z people. But there is a bit of like an age range of everybody that kind of comes. And then people naturally find the people they gravitate towards. So that was pretty surprising to me.
Any testimonies of people who are like, hey, now we like just hang out outside of these speed friending sessions?
I feel like my own friends are kind of a testimony, but maybe I'm biased. But yeah, I've had a couple of people that I've run into like on Nuit Blanche that have been hanging out together. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow.
And overall, you know, why if someone's like on, you know, kind of listening and thinking like, I'm feeling a little bit lonely, you know, why should they come to a speed friending session?
Well, firstly, I think that, again, you would be guaranteed to live with a friend, being me, being the first thing. But secondly, I think just like try something new, get out. There's not a lot of chances to do something like this. So just kind of give it a try, and you never know. You could like meet your next best friend.
So, and like you said, you're kind of creating this third space a little bit for people. This temporary, very temporary third space for people. What do you, just as you know, someone who's struggled finding friends, who is trying to fill this gap, what do you think needs to change to make finding friends more easy, where it doesn't need to be this formalized event? What would you like to see come from society? I know this is a very big picture question for you. I mean, what do you think needs to happen to make your business not needed, essentially?
Well, I mean, I hope one day that's the goal. I'm hoping to grow Bestie Studios into more of like a community platform where people can bring their other events and things like that. But I think I would hope that just people having more courage to approach each other in public, or kind of more empathy between ourselves and amongst each other, to kind of be like, hey, this person's approaching me, and maybe let me not judge them right off the bat. I think would kind of help and go a long way of like kind of breaking down that first barrier.
And do you think it's social media that is that barrier a lot of the time?
Not necessarily. I think, again, it's just kind of like we need to socialize again in a way that people are not socializing. And I don't know if social media helps with that, but I don't necessarily think that it's the whole problem. So, yeah.
Well, Jenna, so if people want to know this next session coming up, what's the details?
So it's tomorrow night from 7 to 9 at Modern Electric Lunch. You can get tickets at the door, or you can get tickets on my Instagram at Bestie Studios.
Well, Jenna, thanks for coming in studio this morning, and all the best.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
That was Jenna Hera-Prasad, the founder and organizer of Bestie Studios. As mentioned, their speed friending event will be taking place at Modern Electric Lunch tomorrow night, 7 p.m. And for more information, you could check out the Instagram page at Let's Be Besties WPG.
You know the voices that tell the story of our province. Now you can take them anywhere. From the essential start to your day on information radio, to the conversations that define our lunch hour on Radio Noon, and the pulse of the city on Up to Speed, your local connection is always within reach. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Your favorite voices, your province, right in your pocket. Download the CBC News app today, your daily rhythm, live and local.
Well, if you've been listening to Information Radio this week, you've been hearing a lot of the Tragically Hip, and we've been asking you to call us to tell us your connection. Tell us all about your connection to the Tragically Hip. That's because 10 years ago, the iconic Canadian band took the stage for the final time in their hometown of Kingston, Ontario. And 1/3 of Canada's population tuned into that 2016 live show on CBC. And as that broadcast unfolded, the nation stood still, and lead singer Gord Downie would later die of brain cancer just in a year later or so. So to mark that 10th anniversary, as we've mentioned, on Saturday, August 22nd, 7 p.m. local time, CBC is re-airing the Tragically Hip, a national celebration, commercial-free. We've also already heard there's actually some watch parties happening around the city around it. There are even, those watch parties are happening right now, we know, at Devil May Care Brewing Company, True North Square in Winnipeg, and the Minnedosa Community Center, and the Dock on Princess in Brandon. And leading up to that anniversary, we want to hear from you. Where were you the night of that final show? What did Gord Downie and the Tragically Hip mean to you? What song still floods you with emotion every time you hear it? You can call our listener line and share your story. That number, 204-788-3205. That's 204-788-3205. And we'll pick one caller to get an epic prize pack. And we've boosted this prize pack actually throughout the week. So the prize right now you can get is a vinyl of the Tragically Hip's greatest hits album, your favorites, a copy of the book This Is Our Life by the Tragically Hip, and CBC swag, including a CBC tote bag, t-shirt, keychain, and toque. So all you got to do is call us and tell us about your connection to the Tragically Hip, 204-788-3205. And here's a song by the Tragically Hip, while you think about it, from their 2000 album, Music at Work. This is the title track, My Music at Work, on CBC Radio One.
Cliches don't try to get to date, and when the sunlight hits the everything is bleak. It's the middle of the night. You're all alone and the dummies might be right. Outside the darkness lurks my music at work. My music at work.
That's the Tragically Hip with Music at Work. And as mentioned, you can win a sweet Tragically Hip CBC prize pack. All you gotta do is call us and tell us all about why you love the Tragically Hip. Maybe tell us a story about what they mean to you. 204-788-3205. Well, next up here on the show, are you concerned about the rising price of food? Well, this summer, the federal government announced it will be investing in wholesale marketplaces, also known as food hubs, as part of Canada's first ever national food security strategy. Now, it's supposed to make groceries more affordable. The plan allows independent grocers to buy food in bulk directly from farmers and sellers and bypass large retailers, potentially lowering prices for consumers. Now, the Fireweed Food Co-op is Manitoba's only food hub, and CBC's Rosanna Hempel spoke to co-chair Katie Damon about how this would work.
And if you were describing what a hub is to someone who doesn't know, or maybe a farmer who doesn't know, how would you describe it?
A food hub typically aggregates and distributes local food products. So there is often an emphasis on sort of sustainability and the way that the food is produced. The farmers are a much smaller scale. There are farmers that typically wouldn't be able to access other avenues, other sales avenues, because they don't necessarily have enough products on their own. Together, sort of like through that aggregation model and through cooperation, we can provide products to larger purchasers like restaurants, like community organizations, and other types of institutions like schools as well.
So you familiarized yourself with the federal strategy?
Yes.
And could I guess get your reaction to, I mean, I know it's a couple months late, but they announced this in June, but that their plan is to have more terminals, which are bigger than hubs, and then have 10 hubs possibly across the country.
Yeah, so when the National Food Strategy came out, I was very excited to see it. There's so much really important work that was done to kind of emphasize what some of the issues are that Canadians are facing and farmers are facing within our food system, because there are a number of issues right now that I think many people are experiencing. We're all experiencing, and is only going to get worse if there's not any work done to solve those issues. As much as they mentioned food hubs on multiple occasions throughout the strategy, and we align with all of the primary goals of the National Food Strategy, such as farmers having more choice and more access to selling points, such as increasing sort of local control, agency, and sovereignty within the food system. Unfortunately, food hubs like ours are excluded from the funding opportunities within that strategy. They're targeting much larger sort of operations. Our food hub operates at a very similar scale to a number of other food hubs that I have seen operating across Canada. And so I think it's not just our food hub, not just Fireweed Food Hub, that is excluded from this particular strategy, but a number of food hubs throughout Canada. The current streams that are available, I believe, require over $10 million of funding being requested or more. Our operating budget is significantly smaller than that, and also 10 permanent full-time year-round employees, which again is not realistic for the type of operation that we run. If you look back into the 2014 small-scale food report that was done by the province of Manitoba, they cite that I believe it's 78% of food processors and farmers are operating with gross profit of $250,000 or less annually, and around 62% of farmers and food processors are operating with an annual gross profit of $100,000 annually. So when you look at that, you can see sort of that small-scale farmers and processors do make up the majority of our food sector in Manitoba.
So let's say there was a hub that was, I don't know if you would get a terminal, but If we got a hub, like, would you be supportive of that? Overall?
Yeah, I think that if there is demand for a hub, then absolutely we should build it. I do question whether that will meet the needs of small-scale farmers right now. There's been multiple reports produced over the last decade and longer about what small-scale farmers need to be better supported. I don't see that particular scale of hub coming up very frequently. I think further paid consultations with farmers would be required to best answer that question. I do see a lot of potential with our hub to scale up if funding were received, and to support farmers to scale up if that was their desire as well, or to increase the number of farmers that we're able to support.
Do you see that as, like, do you think it will make food more affordable?
I am hopeful that in the question of affordability, that there is also a sort of conversation about how farmers can continue to receive fair prices for their products. And so when we're talking about small to mid-sized farmers, there is very little room for them to decrease the sort of price of their product currently without additional on-farm subsidy supports. With the financial position that a lot of farmers are in right now, they need sort of scalable solutions. And starting where they're at is critically important. It's just much too overwhelming to go from 0 to 100 or to go from 10 to 90. And so my hope is that whatever sort of solution is being explored is going to consider the current scale that farmers are at.
That was CBC's Rosanna Hempel speaking to Fireweed Food Co-op co-chair Katie Damon. And you can read more on this story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, coming up this next hour here on Information Radio, a Winnipeg driver says she was inching out of a condo development driveway when she collided with an e-bike that she says was speeding on a sidewalk. Her vehicle was damaged, but her MPI claim was denied. And now she's calling for changes to help drivers navigate the rules when it comes to insurance. She's going to join us in studio coming up after 8 o'clock. But right now, let's check in with Megan Ketchison with a look at news headlines.
Well, good morning. Many reports of plasma donors left hospitalized or with other serious conditions were misclassified. Health Canada says it revised down a list of serious adverse events going back to 2018 from 27 to 9 after a verification exercise this summer. It says for-profit company Grifols flagged that it reported many incidents that did not meet the criteria. That has some questioning why changes can be made after the fact. And we'll hear from a Steinbach man who's created an app to address the transportation gap in smaller cities. Codago launched in May and now has hundreds of users. And we'll have more at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Megan. Traffic alert for you. Still an issue. Northbound Israeli Freeway at Lily, just before you go over the bridge there. It's reduced to one lane now due to a fire, just the median lane. So very slow going. You might want to avoid that if you can. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio One. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. We'll be back after World Report. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
When acclaimed playwright and theater director Giovanni C. went back to school a few years ago, he was told to direct something funny. He'll be here to talk about his modern retelling of the 18th century British comedy, The Way of the World, set this time in Singapore.
You can talk about it really headily, but I swear to God, it'll make you laugh.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's a growing surge in Israeli settler violence and occupation of Palestinian land in the West Bank. Coming up, we'll speak to a man who traveled back to the West Bank, where his brother and nephew were one of the families trapped in a home he owns, which was surrounded by settlers. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Mike Wise. Canadian and U.S. negotiators are working to solidify a new trade deal as the clock ticks down to tomorrow night's extended deadline. U.S. President Donald Trump paused plans to impose punishing 50% tariffs on a host of Canadian goods. Prime Minister Mark Carney spent yesterday briefing Cabinet and the Premiers on where negotiations stand and what steps may come next, amid some concern over potential Canadian concessions. The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian joins us now from Ottawa. So, Rafi, what's the latest?
And Mike, Canada is getting some way toward the deal it's been trying to reach since the start of this trade war with the U.S. Sectoral tariffs should be lowered. Now, by how much, we're not clear yet. One source says the levies on steel and aluminum are going from 50 down to 25%. The Canadian side was asking for something in the vicinity of 10 to 12%. Another question, what Ottawa has conceded in return. U.S. President Donald Trump suggested yesterday American farmers are winners in this coming deal. That's prompted concerns on this side of the border that supply management protections for dairy may have been altered or removed, though the federal government insists that's not the case. Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday spent the afternoon first briefing his cabinet ministers and then his provincial and territorial counterparts. He's asked provinces to get rid of the ban on sales of American liquor should the deal come through.
Okay, thanks, Rafi.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reporting from Ottawa. We have some developing news. CBC News is learning Canada's lead negotiator, Dominic LeBlanc, is scheduled to meet again with his U.S. counterpart in Washington early this afternoon. Now, against these negotiations and discussions, the ongoing trade tensions are expected to loom over Quebec's soon-to-be-called fall election. The CBC's Alexander Silberman explains.
And we already have too much uncertainty. This is not what Quebecers want. This is not what Quebecers are asking for.
Quebec Premier Christine Fréchette, leader of the Coalition Avenir Québec, reacting to a policy pivot by the separatist Parti québécois. Leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon says a referendum is still coming if his party wins the fall election, but not until U.S. President Donald Trump leaves office. Quebecers deserve a calm climate for discussions about their future, he says. The policy shift comes as parties try to appeal to Quebec voters feeling economic anxiety. The last round of tariffs were a major blow to the province's economy, and the trade war is once again top of mind, just days away from the expected start of the fall election.
And we will stand up for their jobs, for the economy.
Christopher Skeet is Quebec's Minister of International Relations.
Unfortunately, the world is increasingly unstable, and we're going to have to get used to that.
Amid the instability, the Parti québécois is leading in the polls, with the Liberals close behind, and the governing CAQ trailing in third. The Quebec election will be held no later than October 5th. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Montreal.
Overnight strikes on Kyiv have left at least 16 people dead. Firefighters rushed to put out the flames in a residential building. It is one of several hit during Russian strikes. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure. Vitaly Klitschko is Kyiv's mayor.
More than 4,000 buildings in our hometown was destroyed. Tonight, in this minute, we can talk about 12 people, civilians. I'm talking just about civilians.
Officials say Russia used drones along with cruise and ballistic missiles during the attack. More than 40 people were injured. Kyiv's mayor is joining the chorus of voices calling for more air defense help from Ukraine's allies.
We need ammunition, we need anti-missile systems, we need support from our partners because it's protection for our civilians, protection for it's life of our citizens, life of civilians people.
Vitaly Klitschko has called for Friday to be observed as a day of mourning. The founder of fallen Chinese real estate giant Evergrande has been sentenced to life in prison for widespread financial fraud. A court in southern China handed down that ruling today. It found the real estate titan guilty of inflating assets, concealing liabilities, and orchestrating extensive bribery. Companies linked to the developer were also fined more than $2 billion. Evergrande collapsed under hundreds of billions of dollars in debt, triggering a property crisis that continues to weigh on China's economy. Cocaine continues to be the most seized substance along the Canada-U.S. border in southwestern Ontario. That's according to the latest data from the Canadian Border Services Agency. As the CBC's Jason Vio tells us, tens of millions of dollars worth of cocaine have already been seized at several of the province's border crossings.
A Canadian Border Patrol dog sniffs a car for drugs at Windsor's Ambassador Bridge, a routine job for Nova and part of a behind-the-scenes tour for CBC News.
The bulk of our business is the narcotics that are coming from the United States.
Justin Morgan is with the CBSA at the bridge. Recent data shows agents at the 7 U.S. border crossings into southwestern Ontario seized more than $82 million worth of cocaine during the first 6 months of 2026. That number on track to surpass records at the same border crossings.
They always try and come up with new and creative ways to get those items into the country or out of the country.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection is seeing a similar trend, saying most of the drugs seized in Detroit were heading to Canada. Public U.S. data also shows that cocaine was the most confiscated drug over the last 2 years at crossings in Michigan and Buffalo, New York.
When it comes to cocaine, there's a very stable source of the plant itself.
Benoit Gomis is a drug trade and organized crime researcher at the Munk School of Global Affairs in Toronto. He says cocaine is appealing to criminal networks because there's also a stable demand.
There's a very straightforward playbook that they're used to. It's an easy substance to smuggle in many ways. It's very small.
Now the Gordie Howe International Bridge is open between Windsor and Detroit. Officials say they're monitoring shifts in traffic patterns and seizure data as the crossing has more advanced tools to detect illegal drugs. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is getting 70,000 vaccine doses to help fight the fastest growing Ebola outbreak in history. The World Health Organization says the doses were developed for a different strain, but early data suggests they may offer some protection. The outbreak in eastern Congo has killed nearly 2,500 people, with cases spreading roughly 3 times faster than the West Africa epidemic a decade ago. Well, more bats are testing positive for rabies in British Columbia. It's causing growing concern for people and pets who may have had a close encounter with the winged animals. And as the CBC's Alana Kelly reports, one vet says everyone needs to be aware of the deadly disease these bats can carry.
Jordy Schnarr is a veterinarian in Whistler. In just one day, she treated 6 pets for encounters with bats.
It's been an unusual year in bat activity.
This year, there's been a big uptick with more than 24 bat encounters.
Vastly different from, what's typically less than a handful.
And people are also having encounters.
Definitely a change from what would be considered normal here.
Schnarr has sent off 4 bats to be tested for rabies. 1 was positive, another 1 was negative, and 2 are still pending.
Rabies is something we take really seriously. It is fatal if left untreated.
Most of the incidents are not happening outside.
A lot of the interactions that are happening with bats are actually inside the home.
1 tested positive for rabies on Vancouver Island in July. The local health authority says finding a single positive case is not unusual. Paula Rodriguez de la Vega is BC's bat coordinator and says people should never touch one.
You can only get rabies through direct contact. Less than 1% of bats can carry rabies.
There has been an increase in people seeing the animals.
We're actually associating that mostly with the wildfires, especially in the Okanagan. The wildfires are displacing wildlife, including bats.
The BC Centre for Disease Control says rabies is rare in humans. Anyone who has come in contact with a bat should seek medical assistance. Alana Kelly, CBC News, Squamish, British Columbia.
And finally, Prince Harry and Meghan are moving back to the United Kingdom 6 years after stepping away from royal life. Their relationship with the royal family soured after they were publicly critical of the monarchy and the family itself. Reports suggest the couple will now settle in a private residence outside London starting this fall. However, the pair will remain private citizens and will not resume official duties for the monarchy. The move follows a recent reunion with King Charles. The king is undergoing cancer treatments. Still, tensions reportedly remain high between Prince William and Harry, as Harry faces massive legal bills from his recent UK media fights. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Mike Wise. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. Happy Thursday. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio here on CBC Radio One, 89.3 FM, 990 AM. Also, we're on YouTube. Lovely mild day ahead for us here in Manitoba. 16 right now in Winnipeg. heading for a cloudy high of 23. Well, coming up this half hour here on the show, we're going to hear from a woman who says MPI found her 100% responsible for a collision she had with an e-bike that was crossing a driveway while riding on the sidewalk. We're going to hear her story and why she'd like to see changes from the city's e-bike to the city's e-bike and e-scooter legislation. That's coming up right here on Information Radio. Stay tuned. $8:11 right now. Let's check in with Megan Ketchison with a look at news headlines.
Well, good morning. A man who fled persecution in Somalia has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for human smuggling in Canada. We'll hear about Abdi Ali, who pleaded guilty to human smuggling. The cases were in the winter of 2024 when he helped foreign nationals cross into Canada from the U.S. on foot. And we'll hear what the judge had to say about what could happen when he's released. And the federal government has a plan to lower grocery prices, and it includes spending $1 billion on food infrastructure, including wholesale marketplaces known as food hubs and food terminals. Manitoba's only food hub likes the idea if there's demand, but questions how it will balance fair prices for local farmers while lowering your bill at the checkout. And we'll have more at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
That's Megan Ketchison at your CBC News desk. Well, as mentioned, mild day across the province here. Right now, Winnipeg, we're sitting at 16, heading for a high of 23. Overnight, we are dipping down to 11. It's going to be partly cloudy. And then tomorrow, we're warming up to a high of 23 with a 30% chance of showers and even potential thunder showers as well. Up in Thompson, 9 degrees right now. You're warming up to 22 today with a 60% chance of showers or thunder showers, going down to 9 overnight with a chance of showers and thunder showers. And that chance of thunderstorms continues into tomorrow. You're going to see a high of 19. And out in Brandon, you're sitting at 9 right now, heading for a high today of 24. You are going down to 11. No chance of rain for you in the forecast for the next 24 hours or so. Just mainly sunny and lovely and warm for you in Brandon. Well, let's check in now with Sierra Sanders, who's in with a look at news headlines. Oh, not news headlines, with the commute. Hello.
If I had some news headlines, I would say them, but I don't have commuter news headlines. We'll go with that. Still keeping an eye on that fire there, just at the base of the Disraeli Bridge as you're heading northbound there. I think crews are still on the scene tending to that, so you are losing the 2 lanes there, so the only lane open would be the median lane there. So you want to keep an eye on that. It might cause some backups here as the morning commute continues. So northbound Disraeli Freeway there, just at the base of it as you're heading onto the bridge there. Fire crews are still tending to a fire there just at the corner. So keep an eye out for that as well. A couple of bigger road closure today that starts today. Logan Avenue heading eastbound there, all eastbound lanes. The south sidewalk will be closed for water work, and they're asking for eastbound traffic to use Notre Dame. And that closure on Logan is between Weston Street to McPhillips Street. So a little bit of a substantial closure there. And that the expected length of this project is supposed to last until October 30th. So a little bit of length on that one there you want to keep an eye out for. Other than that, we still have some time left in the show. So I would love to hear from you if something is going on your commute, no matter how you're getting around, no matter where you are. Give me a call. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, up next on the show, they seem to be everywhere now, but there's still no clear rules on how e-bikes are supposed to be used on Winnipeg roads. The city of Winnipeg says it's currently working through recent provincial legislation changes to decide how to adapt the city's bylaws. And this has left some drivers dealing with the consequences of murky regulations around safe speed limits, pathways, and age limits for personal electric vehicles, especially when it comes to auto insurance. Our next guest says MPI found her 100% responsible after colliding with an e-bike earlier this month. And Carol Lauren says the rider was speeding and on the sidewalk, which is against the law under Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act. And she says traffic laws need to be updated to deal with the surge in e-bikes on our roads. And Carol joins us now in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So just tell us the story about what happened with this incident. How did your car collide with the person on the e-bike?
Okay, I was exiting a condo development, and it is obstructed. The view for the sidewalk on either side is obstructed by an angled fence and landscaping. So as I'm inching forward, looking both ways, checking, at one point when I just finished looking to my right, I turned my head to the left and inched forward. And as that happened, a cyclist that I didn't see because he was not within my view just arrived on high speed and collided into the front of my vehicle, damaging it.
Okay. And what was the reaction from the e-bike rider? What kind of interaction did you have?
Well, I remembered hearing the impact and seeing him flying, and the trauma of seeing that is quite upsetting. As soon as his bike and he landed on the sidewalk across, he stood up real fast, and so then I put my car in park and I went over to see him, and he sort of gestured as though, what was I thinking? I passed that off as him, the shock of everything. Immediately, I was concerned about his safety, and he assured me that he was fine because he's an athlete and he knows how to break a fall so that he doesn't injure his head. But I insisted that he not leave, even though he was in a hurry to leave. I wanted to make sure he was okay, take off his helmet, let's check your bike. And a neighbor who heard it came out and helped me, and the person behind me in the car came out as well. Eventually, we discovered my car was damaged, and I looked at him and said, "You must have been going at quite a high speed to cause that much damage when I'm not really moving. I had just inched forward." Yeah.
So you don't know for sure if he was officially speeding or not, but it's hard to know exactly, I guess, obviously.
Correct. But a witness said, in a vehicle, said that he had seen him. It was high speed. I can't remember his words exactly.
And then you stuck around did you exchange information afterwards, or what was that like?
Well, I asked for his name and his address and number, and I texted him, and we had each other's number. And upset, I went back into my friend's house, and while I was there, he called asking me if I had reported it yet, and I said, no, I'm just still very shaken. So then I gave him my address and license plate because he wanted that, and then, yeah.
So you did eventually make a claim, and I understand you ended up getting a letter from MPI just a couple of days ago. What did that letter say?
Well, I have it here. Sorry, 1 second. I should have had that ready.
Yeah, no problem at all. And obviously, we probably don't have time to read the whole letter. But if you
but
give the
basically,
gist a little
he
bit,
claimed me 100. I am 100% responsible because I left a stop sign before it was safe to do so. So when I contacted them, I said there is no stop sign at this condominium exit, and I was explained that it's implied it's there. And with further questioning, I was explained that until the laws change, because I said, well, he was speeding on his e-bike on a sidewalk, not to mention the danger to pedestrians as well. She said, we can't, there's no ruling on that, so we can't rule based on that. We have to only rule based on the current traffic laws.
So you believe this? So do you believe this is an unfair ruling from MPI?
I do, but I understand how their hands are tied.
And how did you feel when you received that letter overall?
Shocked, upset, angry. I had to call a friend to let out the frustration before I called MPI to understand why I was held responsible.
So what other steps are you taking? What's the next step in terms of your conversations or claim with MPI? And what have you heard in terms of the e-biker side of the story?
I haven't seen his report, but he's claimed an injury regardless of him telling everyone he's not injured. I forget the first question. What was the first?
And just in terms of, what's the next steps between you and MPI?
Well, there's the appeal process, and that's an application I'd have to fill out and
something
send in.
You plan to do, to appeal?
I'm considering it because I'm still processing and digesting this whole event.
Mm-hmm. And what it sounds like from what you said is that there's some rules that that aren't necessarily updated that would allow MPI to make a decision based on how you see it, that you're not at fault for this. So what would you like to see change so that this doesn't become more of a common issue for people?
Well, I would like to see e-vehicle drivers be licensed, obliged to register their e-vehicle, have a license plate always visible, pay MPI insurance and have them accountable should they cause an accident just as much as an automobile driver. And I'd like to see all levels of government update their road and traffic safety laws to ensure that there's a classification of a license for an e-vehicle, and that they make sure that the e-vehicles, whether they're equipped by a manufactured motor or a DIY motor, it classifies them as an e-vehicle.
And not as a pedestrian or as an active commuter. So they would actually have their own license that you're hoping to see.
Yeah, and that they not be allowed to ride on the sidewalks and bicycle paths, because I've witnessed, I'm sure as many other people have, that there's a lot of careless and reckless riding by e-bike drivers, and that they not be allowed to use their phones, as many I've seen watching or looking at their screen on their handlebars.
Carol, thanks for your time this morning, and really appreciate you coming in studio to share your story.
Thank you.
Carol Lauren is a Winnipeg resident that was recently involved in a vehicle collision with an e-bike that was riding on a sidewalk. Now, CBC reached out to MPI about this case, and we are still waiting for a response. But in an email to CBC, MPI says it does not track the number of claims related to e-bikes/e-scooters specifically.
Manitoba may have a reputation for being cold and flat, but our podcast isn't. I'm Marcy Marcusa, the warmest host on the prairies. Even when my podcast, This is Manitoba, is exploring some challenging issues. I'm never flat when it comes to holding our leaders to account. Some of those interviews have been called spicy. If you care about this province, check out This is Manitoba, with new episodes dropping every Wednesday.
And this Wednesday's episode was all about the Russ Wyatt, the controversy around Russ Wyatt, who is still in office, holding his office position, despite facing a number of charges. So we explore the question of should people who hold a position of office be allowed to stay in office? And what do other jurisdictions do across Canada when there is this situation? So we explored that this week on the This is Manitoba podcast. Well, up next here on the show, at this time of year, many students are getting ready to head off to university or college. And for parents, that could mean tapping into their children's education savings that they have spent years building up. The Registered Education Savings Plan, or RESP, has been the easy way to save. And personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Haq explains how to make these education savings go further.
Alex Jessup is an investment advisor at Meridian Credit Union and Aviso Financial. He says the most common mistake he sees with registered education savings plans is users not capitalizing on the long horizon. Rather, they are leaving contributions in safe, low-return conservative funds, like a GIC or a high-yield savings account, resulting in smaller returns overall.
An RESP is just like any other type of account, an RRSP or tax-free savings account, in terms of your investment choices.
He says the focus, especially in the beginning, should be on getting greater returns.
You typically have about a 18-year time horizon if you start on day one. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't be a little more growth focused early on in the RESP and try to maximize the value of the capital that you'll have available when your child enters post-secondary.
The money in a student's RESP can be used for anything related to higher education. Eligible costs include tuition, books, rent, technology, and transportation at universities, colleges, trade schools, and apprenticeship programs. Jessup says it's critical for parents to get the fund opened and invested in early. It unlocks government grants like the Canada Education Savings Grant, which is up to $500 a year for a maximum of $7,200, and the Canada Learning Bond totaling up to $2,000. But Jessup recognizes it can be hard for young parents to find extra cash to save. He shares what he did when his kids were born.
My wife and I were in the exact same position early on, and so you can do a couple things. I mean, you can just automate it. If you get paid bi-weekly, that's 26 pay periods, and put just about $100 per paycheck away. But if that's tight, which is understandable, one strategy is you can ask on birthdays and Christmas to just help out with RESP contributions.
As a CPA who deals with money and taxes every day, Stephanie Riccio was surprised by how much she discovered during the process of withdrawing funds from her daughter's RESP.
To be quite honest, I actually hadn't even heard about the different sources for withdrawals.
Riccio, who hosts the podcast I Have So Much to Tell You, says funds in an RESP have several parts: money contributed after taxes, the Canada Savings Grant, and the gains on all of that money. All of it is treated differently tax-wise.
Now, what that means is you can withdraw from your contributions, which is called the PSE, or you can withdraw from the EAP, which is where the growth and the grants and that portion of the fund reside.
EAP is Educational Assistance Payment, and PSE is Post-Secondary Education. These are the two main ways to withdraw from an RESP for school, and they have different tax rules. Accountant Riccio says this is where tax planning comes in handy.
And it's really important because when you withdraw from your contributions, that is tax-free to the beneficiary, which is your child. But when you withdraw from the EAP, that is not tax-free, and that will end up being reported on their income taxes when they do their tax returns for that tax year.
Riccio's daughter is off to university in just a few short weeks. The accountant says if the process of withdrawing from the RESP is confusing, speak to a tax professional or financial advisor to come up with the best strategy. The last thing you want is to spend years saving for your child's education only to mismanage the withdrawal and pay a bigger tax bill than necessary. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed Haq.
Thank you very much, Rabina. Well, up next here, we got some music for you by Arnold Shimwe. He has a new single that might also, I guess, the title might also be good for investment advice as well. It's a new groovy version of a song he first released 2 years ago. Take a listen. This is Pace Myself.
Don't be afraid, my love. Not here to break your heart. I'm not your past mistake. Here for a brand new start. Got a lot of love to give. I know it can be much. I'll learn to pace myself. I'll learn to pace myself. I've been calling, texting, trying to find you, 'cause I thought we had a good time the other night. But I'm sensing hesitation from you. Could it be I'm not used to these butterflies? Baby, life is too short just to wait around. I'm way too grown to play lost and found. I understand you got history, but that was before you got down with me. Just take my hand and I'll hold you tight. We'll dance until fear is out of sight. Maybe that's not what you need right now. Just say the word and we'll take our time. You're missing. There's a love that will exceed your wildest expectations. Under the sunrise, there's another chance for you to give love a try. Don't be afraid, my love. Not here to break your heart. I'm not your past mistake. Here for a brand new start. Got a lot of love to give. I know it can be much. I'll learn to pace myself. I'll learn to pace myself.
And that right there is a wrap. That's what happens when you open up, you know.
That's Pace Myself by Arnold Shimwe and Sintish Kasueka. You heard it right here on CBC Radio One. What a fun tune. Well, coming up still ahead here on CBC Radio One, Radio Noon's coming up later on today. We're going to tell you all about what the call-in is coming up after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 8:30, mostly cloudy and 16. For today, mostly cloudy, and we're looking at a high of 23. Just a note, northbound Disraeli has been reduced to one lane as crews battle a fire at a boarded-up home on Argyle Street. The city says only the median lane is open and is asking people to use an alternative route if possible. In a social media post, the union representing firefighters is cautioning drivers to slow down and watch for firefighters and other emergency crews in the area. Health Canada says there have been fewer serious adverse reactions among plasma donors than it originally reported. The federal agency says it cut down the list of 27 incidents to 9 after reviewing reports from clinics going back to 2018. Health Canada says for-profit company Grifols flagged that many of its reports did not meet the regulatory criteria. Health policy expert Andrew Longhurst says the revisions raise a lot of questions, and he argues that some would be answered if the system was more transparent.
If we had, for example, public reporting without revealing any personal information, this would add a level of transparency and build public trust.
Health Canada says it reevaluated all reports during the review. The revised list shows 6 events at clinics now owned by Grifols. The company says it continues to work with regulators. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is in Washington meeting at midday with the U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer and Canadian negotiator Janice Charette. As Ottawa and Washington are working to finalize a trade deal by the latest deadline after Donald Trump paused plans to impose a new 50% tariffs on nearly $30 billion in Canadian goods. Negotiators now have until tomorrow to solidify an agreement. That ongoing trade uncertainty is expected to loom large over Quebec's soon-to-be-called fall election. Alexander Silberman explains.
We already have too much uncertainty.
Quebec Premier Christine Fréchette, leader of the Coalition Avenir Québec, reacting to a policy pivot by the separatist Parti Québécois. Leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon says a referendum is still coming if his party wins the fall election, but not until U.S. President Donald Trump leaves office. Quebecers deserve a calm climate for discussions about their future, he says. The policy shift comes as parties try to appeal to Quebec voters feeling economic anxiety. The last round of tariffs were a major blow to the province's economy, and the trade war is once again top of mind, just days away from the expected start of the fall election. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Montreal.
The federal government has a plan to lower grocery prices, and it includes spending $1 billion on food infrastructure, including wholesale marketplaces known as food hubs and food terminals. Manitoba's only food hub likes the idea if there's demand, but questions how it will balance fair prices for local farmers while lowering your bill at the checkout. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
Manitoba's only food hub is getting a delivery of carrots, tomatoes, and more. Fireweed Food Hub helps connect farmers with wholesale buyers like restaurants and schools. Katie Damon helped found the co-op that runs it.
I think a food hub is a great solution to meeting the needs of farmers to increase access to local markets.
Food hubs and food terminals, which are bigger than hubs, are part of Canada's national food security strategy. These marketplaces allow independent grocers to buy food in bulk at competitive prices directly from farmers and producers. Here's Damon again.
I'm hopeful that in the question of affordability, that there is also a conversation about how farmers can continue to receive fair prices for their products.
Ottawa says 10 additional hubs and 2 terminals will be built or expanded by the end of 2028. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A man who fled persecution in Somalia has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for human smuggling in Canada. 33-year-old Abdi Ali pleaded guilty to helping smuggle people into Canada. In 2 cases in the winter of 2024, Ali picked up foreign nationals who had crossed from the U.S. into Manitoba on foot. His lawyer said Ali committed the offenses in a desire to help people facing circumstances like he once did. The judge underscored the dangers of the activity and also suggested with a wife and children, Ali has every reason to never do it again. With time served, he could face another 500 days behind bars and also deportation. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks for the morning, Megan.
Thank you.
That is Megan Ketchison at your CBC News desk. Stay tuned because today on Radio Noon, they're asking you, should elected officials be allowed to stay in office when they're facing criminal charges? This is following calls for Transcona City Councillor Russ Wyatt to step down from his position. Wyatt has been charged with sexual assault and administering a noxious substance and related to an alleged incident in 2023. So what do you think? Should elected officials be allowed to stay in office when facing criminal charges? You can join that conversation today at 12:15 with host Marjorie Dowhouse. Well, Sierra Sanders is in now with a final look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. Yeah, still keeping an eye on that fire there on Argyle Street, which we heard Megan mention. Northbound Disraeli, they're down to one lane. It's your median lane. That's the only lane you have access to as crews work towards that. So you want to keep that in mind and proceed with caution there with that one lane. As well, that closure on Logan Avenue from Weston Street to McPhillip Street, that starts today. All eastbound lanes, the south side sidewalk will be closed for water work. They're asking eastbound traffic to use Notre Dame. That's the city who's asking traffic to use Notre Dame there for traffic. And that is expected, that work's expected to last until October 30th. So a little bit of a longer work there, a longer street work there, but something to keep in mind here as we head into the new season. I guess it's back to school season.
Thank you very much, Sierra.
Thanks.
16 right now, heading for a high today of 23 here in Winnipeg, mainly cloudy. Big thanks to Emily N, Sophia Peralta-Baron, Josh Crabb, Megan Ketchison, Darren Bernhardt, Lana Cole, Jenica Sewell, Sierra Sanders, and Darren Morash. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. I'll be back tomorrow here for another edition of Information Radio. Right now, though, The Current.